Diplomat Hill's face flushes as the young denobulan scientist leans in close, her breath tickling his ear. So, do humans really have a tongue that can eat between my legs? Opal whispers, her large, curious eyes fixed on Hill's mouth. The secluded garden on the denobulan homeworld suddenly feels far too small. Hill tugs at his collar, acutely aware of the delicate nature of this interspecies cultural exchange conference. He opens his mouth to respond, but the words catch in his throat. How does one explain human oral sex to an alien without jeopardizing galactic relations? Well, you see, Opal, Hill begins, choosing his words carefully. Human tongues are quite versatile. We use them for various activities. Opal's antennae twitch with excitement. Fascinating. Can you demonstrate? Before Hill can formulate a diplomatic response, a booming voice shatters the intimate moment. Opal, what are you doing with this? Human? Hill turns to see a stern-faced denobulan official stomping towards them, his elaborate robes billowing in the alien breeze. Opal shrinks back, her earlier boldness evaporating. Father, I was just... Silence, the official barks. He rounds on Hill, jabbing a finger at the human's chest. You dare corrupt our youth with your primitive ways? Is this how Earth conducts diplomacy? Hill raises his hands, palms out. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. I was merely attempting to mate with my daughter? The official sneers. We've heard about your species-based desires. You humans are a plague upon the galaxy. The commotion draws the attention of nearby conference attendees. A crowd begins to form, murmurs of discontent rippling through the gathered aliens. Hill's mind races, acutely aware of how quickly this situation is spiraling out of control. Please, let me explain, Hill pleads, but his words are drowned out by the growing chorus of angry voices. A group of conservative denobulans push to the front of the crowd, their faces contorted with disgust. Humans out! Humans out! They chant, their voices carrying across the once peaceful garden. Hill's communicator chirps urgently. He answers to find his superior's grave face on the screen. Hill, what the hell is going on down there? We're getting reports of anti-human protests spreading across the planet. The denobulan government is threatening to expel all Earth personnel. The gravity of the situation hits Hill like a plasma bolt. This isn't just about a misunderstood conversation anymore. The entire alliance between Earth and Denobula hangs in the balance. Years of careful diplomacy could unravel in a matter of hours. As the crowd's anger swells, Hill catches Opal's eye. She looks terrified, caught between her fascination with humans and her planet's growing hostility. In that moment, Hill realizes the true challenge he faces. It's not just about salvaging this conference or even the alliance. He needs to prove that humans and denobulans can coexist, that their differences can be a source of strength rather than conflict. The chanting grows louder. Humans out! Humans out! Hill takes a deep breath, straightens his uniform, and steps forward to address the crowd. He has one chance to turn this around, to bridge the vast gulf of misunderstanding between their species. The fate of Earth standing in the galactic community rests on his next words. As he opens his mouth to speak, Hill silently curses the complexities of interspecies diplomacy. Who knew a simple question about human tongues could spark a potential intergalactic incident? Hill's words hung in the air, the angry chants of the crowd momentarily quieted by his authoritative stance. But before he could utter a single syllable, a denobulan security officer pushed through the throng. Diplomat Hill, the officer said, his voice clipped and formal. Your presence is required immediately. The High Council has convened an emergency session. Hill's stomach dropped. This was exactly the kind of escalation he'd hoped to avoid. With a final glance at Opal, who looked both frightened and apologetic, he allowed himself to be escorted from the garden. The walk to the council chambers felt interminable. Hill's mind raced, formulating and discarding explanations and apologies. When they arrived, he was ushered into a vast circular room, its tiered seating filled with stern-faced Denobulan officials. At the center stood a tall, imposing figure Hill recognized as head counselor Thax. "Diplomat Hill," Thax's voice boomed across the chamber. "You stand before us to answer for your actions. Explain to this council the nature of human mating practices and their potential impact on our society." Hill swallowed hard, acutely aware of the scrutiny from all sides. "Counselors," he began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil, "human sexuality is complex and varied. What transpired in the garden was a simple misunderstanding, not an attempt at mating." As Hill continued his explanation, carefully choosing his words to avoid further offense, he noticed a shift in the counselor's expressions. What had begun as hostility was morphing into something closer to confusion. Thax leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You mean to say that human pheromones do not signal mating intent?" "Pheromones?" Hill blinked, realization dawning. "Counselor, humans don't communicate via pheromones. Our presence here, it's disrupted your natural system, hasn't it?" Before Thax could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Opal strode in, her father close behind, sputtering with indignation. "Counselors, please," Opal called out, brandishing a data pad. "I have information crucial to these proceedings." Despite her father's attempts to pull her back, Opal made her way to the center of the chamber. She stood beside Hill, their shoulders almost touching. "My research shows that while human pheromones differ from ours, they're not inherently harmful or disruptive," Opal explained, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. "With proper education and adaptation, our species can coexist without biological interference." The council erupted into murmurs. Hill caught Opal's eye, a silent moment of understanding passing between them. Her father, however, was far from pleased. As the council deliberated, the angry Denobulan official from the garden, now identified as Opal's father, stepped forward. "Enough of this foolishness," he growled. "I've arranged for Opal to be joined with Vornik, son of Counselor Mira, in a traditional mating ceremony. She will no longer be subject to human influence." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Opal's face paled, her eyes wide with shock. Hill felt a surge of protectiveness, coupled with a realization of how deep his feelings for her had already grown. "Counselors, if I may," Hill called out, raising his voice above the din. The room gradually quieted. "I propose an alternative. A controlled experiment, if you will. I volunteer to undergo a modified version of your mating ritual with Opal under the supervision of your scientists. This could provide valuable data on human Denobulan compatibility and potentially improve relations between our species." The silence that followed was deafening. Opal's father looked ready to explode, while Opal herself appeared both terrified and thrilled by the idea. Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared throughout the building. A harried aide rushed into the chamber, whispering urgently to Thax. The head counselor's face grew grave. "We have reports of a mysterious illness spreading across the planet," Thax announced. "Both humans and Denobulans are affected. Symptoms include heightened sexual arousal and disrupted pheromone responses." Hill and Opal exchanged alarmed glances. The connection to their earlier discussion was impossible to ignore. Thax turned to them, his expression a mix of desperation and drive. "Diplomat Hill, Scientist Opal, we task you with leading a joint research team to investigate this outbreak. You must find the cause and develop a cure. The future of our interspecies relations depends on your success." As they left the council chamber, the weight of their new mission settling on their shoulders, Hill couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. He and Opal would be working closely together, their growing attraction now complicated by duty and the watchful eyes of both their species. Their first stop was the primary medical research facility in the capital. As they hurried through the sterile corridors, Opal briefed Hill on denobulan physiology. Our pheromone system is intricate, she explained, her fingers flying over a data pad. It regulates everything from basic social interactions to complex mating behaviors. If human presence is somehow interfering. She trailed off as they entered the main laboratory. The room was a flurry of activity, denobulan and human scientists working side by side, their earlier animosity forgotten in the face of the growing crisis. A holographic display dominated the center of the room, showing a real-time map of the outbreak spread. Red dots, indicating infected individuals, multiplied before their eyes. It's spreading faster than we anticipated, a human scientist called out, her voice tinged with worry. He'll step closer to the display, his mind racing. We need to isolate the first cases, he said. Find patient 0 for both species. Opal nodded, already pulling up case files. There, she pointed to a flashing icon. The first reported human case. It's you, Hill. Their eyes met, a moment of shared realization passing between them. Whatever had sparked between them in that garden was more than just a cultural misunderstanding. It was a beginning of something that could reshape the future of human denobulan relations, for better or for worse. As alarms continued to blare and more data poured in, Hill and Opal rolled up their sleeves, ready to dive into their research. The fate of 2 worlds rested on their ability to unravel this medical mystery, their growing feelings for each other adding an extra layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. The fate of 2 worlds rested on their ability to unravel this medical mystery, their growing feelings for each other adding an extra layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Hill and Opal wasted no time in establishing a makeshift research lab within a quarantined section of the capital city. They commandeered a spacious warehouse, quickly transforming it into a state-of-the-art facility filled with medical equipment and monitoring devices. The air hummed with the sound of machinery and the urgent voices of scientists working around the clock. As they pored over blood samples and pheromone readings, Hill couldn't help but notice the way Opal's antennae twitched when she was deep in concentration. He found himself staring at her more often than he cared to admit, her presence both a distraction and a motivation. "Hill, look at this," Opal called out, her eyes wide with excitement. She gestured to a holographic display showing a complex molecular structure. "I think I've found the source of the illness." He hurried to her side, acutely aware of her proximity. "What is it?" Opal manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a particular section. "It's an interaction between human sweat and a compound found in the Jalar plant. We use it in our air purification systems." Hill's brow furrowed. "But why is it affecting both species?" "The interaction creates a new airborne compound," Opal explained, her fingers flying over the controls. "It's altering the neurochemistry of both humans and denobulans, leading to the symptoms we're seeing." As they worked side by side to develop an antidote, Hill found it increasingly difficult to focus. The air in the lab felt thick and heavy, charged with an electric tension that had nothing to do with the equipment surrounding them. He caught Opal's eye, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. A loud bang from outside jolted them back to reality. Hill rushed to the window, his heart sinking at the sight that greeted him. A large crowd had gathered outside the research facility, their angry chants echoing through the quarantine zone. "Humans out! Protect Denobula!" They shouted, waving signs and banners. Opal joined him at the window, her face pale. "That's my father," she whispered, pointing to a figure at the front of the crowd. "He's leading the protests." Before Hill could respond, the lab's communication system crackled to life. "Diplomat Hill, this is Admiral Hartwell. I just landed on Denobula with a team of Earth's top scientists. We'll be at your location in 10 minutes. Hill exchanged a worried glance with Opal. The arrival of Earth's military presence could either help or severely complicate their already delicate situation. True to his word, Admiral Hartwell strode into the lab exactly 10 minutes later, flanked by a team of stern-faced human scientists. His piercing gaze swept the room before settling on Hill. "Report, diplomat," Hartwell barked, his voice crisp and authoritative. Hill straightened his posture, acutely aware of the scrutiny. "Admiral, we've identified the cause of the illness and are working on an antidote. Dr. Opal has been instrumental in our progress." Hartwell's eyes narrowed as they flicked between Hill and Opal. "I see. And you're certain you can remain objective in this situation, Hill?" Before Hill could defend himself, Opal stepped forward. "Admiral, I assure you our work has been nothing but professional. In fact, we've just made a breakthrough." She led them to the central workstation, where a vial of iridescent liquid sat in a containment field. "This is our prototype antidote. It shows promise in neutralizing the effects of the compound." Hartwell leaned in, his interest piqued. "How do you propose to test it?" Hill took a deep breath, knowing his next words would change everything. "The antidote needs to be tested under conditions that replicate the heightened arousal and pheromone disruption. We believe the most effective method would be to conduct a modified version of the denobulin mating ritual." The lab fell silent, all eyes on Hill and Opal. Hartwell's expression was unreadable as he processed the information. "And who do you propose as test subjects for this ritual?" The Admiral asked, his tone dangerously neutral. Hill stood tall, meeting Hartwell's gaze. "I volunteer myself as the human subject, sir." Opal stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "And I volunteer as a denobulin subject." Hartwell's eyebrows shot up, and he opened his mouth to object, but Hill pressed on. "Admiral, this is our best chance to solve this crisis and salvage relations between our species. The risks are high, but the potential benefits are immeasurable." For a long moment, Hartwell said nothing. The tension in the room was palpable, broken only by the persistent chants of the protesters outside. Finally, the Admiral nodded. "Very well. But I'll be personally overseeing every aspect of this experiment. We can't afford any mistakes." As the team began preparing for the unprecedented test, Hill caught Opal's eye across the room. In that shared glance, he saw a mix of fear, excitement, and something deeper, a connection that transcended their differences. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, carrying the hopes of two worlds on their shoulders. The specially designed chamber for the ritual loomed before them, its smooth, curved walls adorned with pulsing biosensors. Hill's heart raced as he and Opal approached the entrance, acutely aware of the eyes watching their every move. Admiral Hartwell stood nearby, his face a mask of stern professionalism as he oversaw the final preparations. "Remember," Hartwell said, his voice low and intense, "the fate of our alliance rests on the success of this experiment. Remain focused on the task at hand." Hill nodded, trying to ignore the flutter in his stomach that had nothing to do with diplomatic pressure. As the chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss, he and Opal exchanged one last look, a silent understanding passing between them. They stepped inside, the doors sealing behind them with a sense of finality. The interior of the chamber was bathed in a soft, pulsating light that seemed to match the rhythm of Hill's accelerating heartbeat. The air was thick with a sweet, alien scent, the antidote, vaporized and filling the enclosed space. As he inhaled deeply, Hill felt a warmth spreading through his body, his senses heightening to an almost painful degree. Opal stood before him, her eyes wide and luminous in the ethereal light. Her antennae quivered, picking up on pheromones that Hill could only imagine. She took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you ready to begin the ritual, Hill?" He swallowed hard, nodding as he struggled to find his voice. "Yes," he managed, his skin tingling with anticipation. "Let's make history. History Let's do this. As they stepped onto the padded platform at the center of the chamber, Hill felt a rush of anticipation mixed with nervousness. The soft lighting pulsed gently, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. He took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet alien scent of the vaporized antidote that filled the air. Opal's eyes met his, her antennae quivering with heightened sensitivity. "We'll start with the traditional greeting," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of monitoring equipment. She raised her hand, palm facing outward. Hill mirrored her movement, their palms hovering inches apart. As they slowly brought their hands together, Hill gasped at the intensity of the sensation. Every nerve ending in his palms seemed to come alive, sending shockwaves of pleasure up his arm. "Fascinating." Opal breathed, her eyes wide. "Your skin temperature has increased dramatically." They moved through the choreographed steps of the ritual, each touch and movement, sending ripples of energy through their bodies. Hill found himself hyper-aware of every sensation. The softness of Opal's skin, the subtle shifts in air current as they moved, even the faint vibrations of the equipment surrounding them. As they progressed, Hill noticed a change in Opal's appearance. Her skin began to emit a faint, pulsating glow, bathing them both in a soft, ethereal light. "Opal," he whispered, awestruck, "you're glowing." She looked down at her arms in surprise. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the intensity of the moment. Their movements became more fluid, more instinctual, as they lost themselves in the ritual. The world beyond the chamber faded away, leaving only the two of them, moving in perfect synchronicity. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered their focus. Red emergency lights began flashing, and they could hear muffled shouts and the sound of running feet outside the chamber. "What's happening?" Hill asked, his heart racing. Before Opal could respond, Admiral Hartwell's voice crackled over the intercom. "The facility has been breached. Extremists have broken through the quarantine zone. Continue the ritual. We need that data." Hill and Opal exchanged a look of perseverance. They redoubled their efforts, their movements becoming more urgent, more passionate. The threat of danger outside only seemed to heighten their connection, their bodies responding with increasing intensity. As they neared the culmination of the ritual, Hill felt a strange energy building within him. Opal's skin glowed brighter, pulsing in time with their synchronized heartbeats. The air around them seemed to crackle with invisible electricity. "Hill," Opal gasped, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Something's happening, Dash." Her words were cut off as a burst of energy exploded from their intertwined bodies. The force of it knocked them both unconscious, their forms collapsing onto the padded platform. In the observation room, chaos erupted as every piece of electronic equipment went dark. Emergency klaxons fell silent, plunging the facility into an eerie quiet broken only by shouts of confusion and the distant sounds of conflict. When Hill regained consciousness, he found himself in a sterile medical bay, bright lights causing him to squint. As his vision cleared, he saw Opal on a bed next to him, her skin still emitting a soft glow. He tried to speak, but his tongue felt strange, elongated. Running it along the roof of his mouth, he felt unfamiliar ridges and textures. Panic began to set in as he realized something fundamental had changed. As if sensing his distress, Opal's eyes fluttered open, their gazes locked, and suddenly Hill was overwhelmed by a flood of emotions and sensations that weren't his own. Confusion, fear, curiosity, all radiating from Opal's mind directly into his. "What's happening to us?" he thought into his shock. He heard Opal's voice in his mind replying, "I don't know, but I can hear you. I can feel what you're feeling." Before they could process this new development, the door to the medical bay slid open. Admiral Hartwell strode in, his face a mask of concern and nearly unleashed anger. "We have a situation," he announced grimly. "That energy pulse you generated, It was detected by half the galaxy. Now we've got alien fleets inbound, all demanding answers about our supposed new technology. The Denobulan government has put us under complete quarantine, and Earth is mobilizing a defensive fleet. Hill and Opal exchanged a look of horror, their new mental connection amplifying their shared sense of responsibility and fear. "Sir," Hill began, his voice distorted by his altered tongue, "what can we do?" Hartwell's expression softened slightly. "For now, you two need to focus on understanding what's happened to you. Our scientists are baffled by the changes in your physiology. Once we understand that, maybe we can start to unravel this mess." As Hartwell turned to leave, Hill reached out mentally to Opal. In the depths of their shared consciousness, beneath the fear and uncertainty, they found a glimmer of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their bond now transcending the physical and redefining the very nature of human denobulan relations. Relations? The mental link between them pulsed with a mix of confusion, fear, and an underlying current of excitement. As they lay in the medical bay, Hill's altered tongue explored the new ridges in his mouth, each texture sending a cascade of unfamiliar sensations through his nervous system. Opal's skin continued to emit a soft, pulsating glow that seemed to dance in response to her emotions. Dr. Zena, the lead denobulan scientist, entered the room with a team of researchers. Her antennae twitched with hardly restrained scientific curiosity as she approached the beds. "Fascinating," she murmured, running a scanner over Hill's body. "Your genetic structure has undergone significant alterations. And Opal, your bioluminescence. It's responding to emotional stimuli." As Dr. Zena spoke, Hill felt a surge of anxiety from Opal. Without thinking, he reached out mentally, sending a wave of reassurance. Opal's eyes widened in surprise, and her skin brightened in response. "Did you just—" She began aloud, then switched to mental communication. "I felt that. How are we doing this?" Before Hill could respond, Admiral Hartwell burst into the room, his face a mask of controlled panic. "We've got incoming," he announced grimly. "Multiple alien fleets approaching Denobula. The Arcturians have dispatched a science vessel, and the Zarkon Collective is mobilizing a battle fleet." Hill sat up abruptly, wincing as his head spun. "Sir, what's our response?" Hartwell's mind focused. Earth is activating emergency protocols. They're sending Ambassador Elena Rodriguez to negotiate, but... He paused, his expression darkening. Her shuttle was just intercepted by a Zarkon patrol. A commotion outside the medical bay drew their attention. Through the window, they could see protesters clashing with security forces. Angry chants demanding the expulsion of humans echoed through the corridors. Dr. Zena's communicator chirped urgently. She listened for a moment, her antennae drooping in distress. "It's happening all over the planet," she reported. "Civil unrest is spreading rapidly." Opal's face paled. "My father," she whispered, both aloud and in Hill's mind. "He's behind this." As if on cue, a holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room. Counselor Thax's stern face loomed large, his eyes burning with almost unchecked rage. "I demand the immediate arrest of the human, Hill," he proclaimed. "He has corrupted my daughter and endangered our entire species. Opal must be separated from him at once." Hill felt a surge of defiance from Opal through their mental link. She sat up, her skin glowing fiercely. "Father, you don't understand Dash." Her words were cut short as a wave of dizziness washed over her. Hill felt it too, a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body. Around them, the medical staff stumbled, clutching their heads. "What's happening?" Hartwell demanded, steadying himself against a wall. Dr. Zena's eyes widened in realization. "The antidote," she gasped. "It's interacting with traces of the energy pulse. We're seeing widespread mutations." As the room erupted into chaos, Hill and Opal locked eyes. Through their strengthening mental bond, they shared a moment of clarity. Whatever was happening to them, to everyone it was bigger than they had imagined. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the facility. Hartwell rushed to a nearby console, his face paling as he read the incoming data. Long-range sensors have detected an unidentified object, he reported. It's approaching Denobula at incredible speed. Hill struggled to his feet, Opal supporting him as they moved to look at the console. The object's trajectory was clear. It was heading straight for them. Another complication, Hill muttered, feeling the weight of the crisis pressing down on them. Opal squeezed his hand, her thoughts brushing against his. "We'll face it together," she projected, her mental voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. As they watched the mysterious object hurtle towards Denobula, Hill and Opal stood at the center of a storm. Multiple alien fleets closing in, civil unrest spreading across the planet, and now an unknown entity racing towards them. Their newfound abilities hummed with potential, a bridge between worlds that could either save them all or tear the galaxy apart. Dr. Zena approached them, her face set with tenacity. "We need to understand these mutations," she said urgently. "Your transformation might hold the key to controlling this outbreak." Hill nodded, feeling the enormity of the task ahead. As they prepared to delve into the mystery of their altered genetics, the facility shuddered under the weight of the protests outside. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what this unprecedented crisis would bring. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what this unprecedented crisis would unleash. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility, their shrill cry cutting through the tension. Hill and Opal's newfound empathic abilities amplified the wave of collective anxiety that washed over them, emanating from the population outside. Admiral Hartwell's eyes widened as he studied the incoming data on a nearby console. "The unidentified object," he announced, his voice taut with urgency. "It's decelerating rapidly as it enters Denobula's atmosphere." Through the windows, they watched as the planet's defense systems activated automatically, energy shields shimmering to life around key installations. The object, now visible as a sleek, silvery craft of unfamiliar design, streaked across the sky before touching down in a remote area near the capital city. Panic rippled through the already agitated populace. Hill could feel the fear and uncertainty gripping the planet, the sensation so intense it made his newly altered skin prickle. "We need to investigate," Opal said, her voice steady despite the turmoil Hill sensed through their mental link. Hartwell nodded grimly. "I'm dispatching a joint human-Denobulan security team immediately." Dr. Zena stepped forward, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "I'll prepare containment protocols. We can't risk biological contamination on top of everything else." As the medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity, Hill and Opal exchanged a meaningful glance. Their unique abilities could prove crucial in this unfolding crisis. "Admiral," Hill said, pushing himself to his feet despite the lingering dizziness, "we should join the investigation team." Opal nodded in agreement. "Our enhanced senses might pick up on things others would miss. And if there are sentient beings aboard that craft, our empathic abilities could be vital for first contact." Hartwell's brow furrowed as he considered their request. After a moment of tense silence, he gave a curt nod. "All right, but I'm coming with you. We can't afford any more surprises." As they prepared to depart, reports flooded in from across the planet. The mutated antidote was spreading rapidly, causing unpredictable genetic alterations in both Denobulans and humans. Some exhibited enhanced physical abilities, while others developed entirely new sensory perceptions. The journey to the landing site was tense, the air thick with anticipation. As they approached, Hill and Opal's mental link intensified. Faint thought patterns began to emanate from the spacecraft, unlike anything they had ever encountered. The security team established a perimeter around the alien craft, which remained sealed and silent. Hill's altered tongue tasted something strange in the air, a complex molecular structure he couldn't identify. Without warning, a hatch on the spacecraft slid open. A fine, shimmering mist billowed out, enveloping the team before they could react. Hill's heightened senses detected intricate chemical compounds within the mist, carrying information in a way he could barely comprehend. As the mist dissipated, Hill noticed changes rippling through his body. His tongue developed additional sensory nodes, allowing him to perceive electromagnetic frequencies as distinct flavors. Beside him, Opal's skin patterns shifted and swirled with increasing complexity, responding to the information carried by the mist. The spacecraft's hatch opened fully, revealing a chamber filled with a translucent, gelatinous substance. Within this strange medium, a pulsating, organic mass thrummed with alien life. Drawing on their enhanced abilities, Hill and Opal reached out mentally, establishing a tenuous connection with the entity. Information flooded their minds, overwhelming at first, then coalescing into coherent thoughts. "It's called a chorus," Opal whispered, her voice filled with awe. "An ancient, highly advanced species that exists between matter and energy." Hill nodded, his heart pounding from the influx of knowledge. They detected the energy pulse from our mating ritual. It resonated with their form of communication. As they absorbed the staggering information, alarms blared across the planet once more. Admiral Hartwell's communicator crackled to life, relaying urgent messages from Earth and the Denobulan High Council. "The Zarkon fleet has launched an attack on our orbital defenses," Hartwell announced, his face grim. "They're after what they think is a powerful new technology." Hill and Opal shared a look of tenacity. Their bodies continued to evolve, adapting to the chorus mist. They realized that they might hold the key to preventing the impending conflict. "We need to amplify our abilities," Hill said, his voice steady despite the enormity of what he was proposing. "If we can broadcast a message of peace to the warring factions." Opal squeezed his hand, her skin pulsating with energy. "The risks are enormous, but we have to try." As energy weapons lit up the sky above Denobula, Dr. Zena began hasty preparations for the dangerous procedure. Medical equipment was set up around Hill and Opal, who shared a moment of intense emotional and physical intimacy. Their bodies glowed and pulsated with energy as the procedure began. Waves of power coursed through them, accelerating their transformation beyond anything previously observed. The fate of multiple worlds now rested on their shoulders as they pushed the boundaries of human and denobulan physiology to their absolute limits. As the couple arched in unison, their minds reaching out across the vastness of space, the battle raged on above. The outcome of their bold strategy would determine the future of interstellar relations and the evolution of entire species. In this crucible of conflict and transformation, a new chapter in galactic history was about to unfold. The medical bay hummed with nervous energy as Dr. Zena and her team prepared for the procedure. Hill and Opal lay side by side on specially designed biobeds, their hands intertwined. Admiral Hartwell stood nearby, his face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hill nodded, feeling Opal's grit through their mental link. "We have to try, sir. It's our best shot at stopping this conflict." As the medical staff attached sensors and calibrated equipment, the air in the room grew thick with anticipation. Dr. Zena's antennae twitched as she made final adjustments to the amplification device. "Initiating the procedure now," she announced, her fingers dancing across a control panel. A low hum filled the air as waves of energy began to course through Hill and Opal's bodies. Their skin prickled, tingling with an otherworldly sensation. Hill gritted his teeth, fighting against the discomfort as he felt his body changing at a molecular level. Beside him, Opal gasped, her grip on his hand tightening. Through their link, he sensed her mix of exhilaration and fear as the transformation accelerated beyond anything they had experienced before. The medical equipment around them began to beep erratically, struggling to keep up with the rapid changes in their physiology. Dr. Zena's eyes widened as she studied the readings. Their genetic structure is rewriting itself at an unprecedented rate, she reported, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. I've never seen anything like this. Suddenly, a bright, multicolored light erupted from Hill and Opal's bodies, engulfing the entire room. The intensity forced everyone to shield their eyes, and the medical equipment sparked and sputtered under the onslaught of energy. When the light finally subsided, gasps of shock echoed through the room. Hill blinked, his vision clearing to reveal a drastically altered world. He could see energy patterns swirling in the air, taste electromagnetic frequencies on his newly evolved tongue. Turning to Opal, he was struck by her transformation. Her skin pulsated with intricate, ever-shifting patterns that seemed to convey complex information. Her eyes, now multifaceted and iridescent, met his with a look of wonder. "Hill," she whispered, her voice resonating with newfound depth. "I can see everything." As they sat up, marveling at their changed bodies, Admiral Hartwell approached cautiously. "How do you feel?" he asked, his voice tinged with a mix of concern and hope. Hill flexed his fingers, watching as his skin shifted color and texture in response to his surroundings. "Different," he replied, struggling to find the right words. "Powerful, but controlled." Opal nodded in agreement, her skin patterns swirling with excitement. "It's like our senses have expanded exponentially. I can perceive the thoughts and emotions of everyone in this facility." Dr. Zena stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial shock. "Fascinating. Your genetic structure has stabilized in a way I've never seen before. It's as if your bodies have found a perfect balance between human and denobulan physiology, with some entirely new elements added in." Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Hartwell rushed to a nearby console, his face grim as he read the incoming reports. "The Zarkon fleet has breached our outer defenses," he announced, his voice tight with urgency. "They're moving towards the planet's surface. Earth's reinforcements are still hours away, and our military is struggling to hold them back." Hill and Opal exchanged a determined look, their enhanced mental link allowing them to formulate a plan without speaking. They turned to Hartwell, their newly evolved bodies practically humming with potential. "Admiral," Hill said, his voice steady, "we have an idea. We believe we can generate a large-scale version of the energy pulse that initially attracted the chorus. It could potentially disable the Zarkon fleet's weapons and communication systems." Opal nodded, her skin patterns shifting to display complex calculations. "If we can amplify our combined abilities, we might be able to buy enough time for diplomatic efforts to take effect." Hartwell's eyebrows shot up. "That's a bold plan. How do you propose to generate such a pulse?" As if in response, the gelatinous ship containing the chorus entity pulsed with light. A tendril of its translucent substance extended towards them, conveying a complex stream of information directly into Hill and Opal's minds. "The chorus is offering to help," Opal translated, her eyes widening at the implications. "It says the energy generated by our union resonates with fundamental forces of the universe. With its assistance, we could manipulate matter and energy on a massive scale." As they began preparations for this audacious plan, new complications arose. Reports flooded in from across the planet, describing widespread genetic mutations among both denobulans and humans. Individuals were manifesting a variety of enhanced abilities, from superhuman strength to telepathic powers. Dr. Zena's communicator chirped urgently. She listened for a moment, her antennae drooping with concern. "The mutations are spreading rapidly," she reported. "Major cities are descending into chaos as people struggle to control their new abilities." Hill felt a wave of anxiety wash over him, amplified by his heightened empathic senses. He could almost taste the fear and confusion gripping the planet's population. Opal squeezed his hand, her skin patterns pulsing with drive. "We need to act fast," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil around them. "Not just to stop the Zarkon invasion, but to help stabilize these mutations before the situation spirals out of control." As they moved to implement their plan, a new player entered the fray. A massive ship, easily identifiable as belonging to the Arcturian Empire, decelerated into orbit around Denobula. Admiral Hartwell's communicator crackled to life, relaying a transmission from the Arcturian vessel. "This is Grand Scientist Zelthor of the Arcturian Empire," a melodious voice announced. "We request permission to send a research team to study the transformed individuals. In exchange, we offer our advanced medical knowledge to help stabilize the mutations affecting your population." The Admiral looked to Hill and Opal, his expression conflicted. "What do you think?" he asked, recognizing that their enhanced perception might provide valuable insight. Hill's tongue flicked out, tasting the complex mix of intentions and motivations behind the Arcturian offer. Opal's skin swirled with rapid calculations and analysis. "We don't have much choice," Hill said finally. "We need their help to contain this crisis. But we should proceed with caution." Opal nodded in agreement. "Let's focus on generating the pulse first. We can deal with the Arcturians once we've neutralized the immediate threat." With time running out, Hill and Opal moved to the center of the hastily constructed amplification device. The Chorus entity pulsed with energy, ready to assist in magnifying their abilities. As they embraced, their bodies intertwining, the air around them began to crackle with power. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and waves of energy rippled outward in ever-expanding circles. Hill locked eyes with Opal, feeling the full force of their combined will focusing on a single purpose. As the Zarkon fleet entered the atmosphere and chaos spread across the planet's surface, they prepared to unleash a power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The fate of multiple worlds hung in the balance as Hill and Opal channeled the newfound energy coursing through their transformed bodies. The amplification device hummed with increasing intensity, the Chorus entity pulsating in sync with their united heartbeats. With a shared breath, they prepared to release the massive energy pulse that could change the course of the conflict and reshape the future of interspecies relations and the evolution of entire species. In this crucible of conflict and transformation, a new chapter in galactic history was about to unfold. As Hill and Opal embraced, their bodies glowed with an intensity that surpassed anything they had experienced before. The amplification device surrounding them vibrated with terrifying power, its components straining under the immense energy buildup. Dr. Zena and her team took cover behind protective barriers, while Admiral Hartwell watched with a mix of hope and trepidation. The air crackled with electricity, and the room filled with a high-pitched whine that set everyone's teeth on edge. Hill felt Opal's heartbeat synchronize with his own, their shared consciousness expanding to encompass the pulsing energy of the Chorus entity. With a final surge of will, they unleashed the massive energy pulse. A blinding flash erupted from their intertwined forms, expanding outward in a rapidly growing sphere of pulsating, multicolored light. The force of the release catapulted Hill and Opal apart, their bodies still crackling with residual energy as they landed several meters from each other. The pulse raced through the atmosphere, enveloping Denobula in its radiant embrace before extending into space. As it reached the Zarkon fleet, the invader ships flickered and failed. Weapon systems powered down, engines sputtered to a halt, and communication arrays fell silent. The once mighty armada now drifted helplessly in orbit, temporarily neutralized. However, the pulse's effects extended far beyond its intended target. Across Denobula's surface, the mutated population experienced a sudden surge in their newly developed abilities. In the capital city, A construction worker with enhanced strength accidentally demolished an entire building with a single touch, his anguished cry lost in the chaos of collapsing structures. Elsewhere, a young telepath clutched her head in agony as the thoughts of thousands of panicked citizens flooded her mind, threatening to overwhelm her sanity. The Chorus entity, too, underwent a startling transformation. Its gelatinous form expanded rapidly, merging with the structure of its ship. Tendrils of shimmering, translucent material extended outward, intertwining with nearby equipment and architecture. The consciousness of the Chorus seemed to spread throughout the vessel, altering its very nature in ways that defied conventional understanding. In orbit, the Arcturian research vessel found itself caught in the pulse's path. Grand Scientist Zelthor watched in fascination and horror as the ship's bioorganic components reacted violently to the energy wave. The vessel's structure began to shift and flow, merging with the bodies of the Arcturian crew. Zelthor felt his own form melding with the ship's systems, his mind expanding to encompass the entirety of the vessel's consciousness. Back in the facility, Hill struggled to his feet, his body tingling with unfamiliar sensations. He looked down at his hands, marveling at the metallic sheen that now covered his skin. With a thought, he watched as the surface hardened into an armor-like state, then relaxed back to its previous form. His tongue flicked out instinctively, extending far beyond its normal length and analyzing the air with newfound sensitivity. Across the room, Opal rose unsteadily, her skin pulsating with intricate bioluminescent patterns. The air around her seemed to shimmer and dance in response to her movements. As she blinked, holographic displays projected from her eyes, filling the space before her with a dizzying array of data streams and analytical models. Hill turned to Opal, his mouth opening to speak, but the words died in his throat. The mental link they had shared since their initial transformation was gone, severed by the explosion of energy. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he found himself unable to censor thoughts and emotions. The sudden isolation left him feeling adrift and vulnerable. "Opal," he called out, his voice hoarse and uncertain. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and fear. "Hill, I can't feel you anymore." Before they could process this new development, Dr. Zena emerged from her protective shelter, her antennae twitching with excitement and concern. She approached Hill and Opal cautiously, her medical scanner whirring as she assessed their conditions. "Fascinating," she breathed, her eyes darting between the readouts and the transformed couple. "The energy discharge has pushed your evolution to unprecedented levels. These new abilities, they're beyond anything we could have predicted." Admiral Hartwell's voice crackled over the facility's communication system, tight with urgency. "Dr. Zena, we need a status report. The pulse has affected the entire planet, and we're receiving reports of widespread chaos. What's the situation with Hill and Opal?" As Zena began to respond, a new alarm blared through the facility. Hill's enhanced senses picked up a flurry of activity outside, and he moved to a nearby window. In the sky above, he saw a swarm of small, agile ships darting between the immobilized Zarkon vessels. His evolved tongue tasted the air, detecting traces of unfamiliar energy signatures. "Admiral," Hill called out, his voice sharp with urgency. "We have new arrivals. Unknown ships are approaching the disabled Zarkon fleet." Hartwell's response was immediate and grim. "Confirmed. We're detecting a large number of vessels belonging to the Releft Consortium. They must have been drawn by the energy pulse." Opal joined Hill at the window, her holographic displays scrolling with data as she analyzed the approaching ships. "They're pirates," she said, her voice filled with newfound certainty. "Technology thieves. They're after the Zarkon ships. And us." As the consortium vessels began their descent towards the nebula's surface, Hill and Opal exchanged a look of persistence. Despite the loss of their mental link, they could still read each other's intentions. They needed to reconnect, to understand their new abilities, and to find a way to face this latest threat. The fate of multiple worlds now rested on their ability to adapt and unite the fractured factions against the opportunistic Releft Consortium. As alarms blared and chaos reigned both on the planet and in orbit, Hill and Opal prepared to step into their new roles as the unlikely linchpins of galactic stability. Stability as the latest threat descended upon them. The Releft Consortium ships pierced through Denobula's atmosphere, their sleek forms cutting through the clouds with predatory grace. Hill's metallic skin gleamed as he sprinted towards the nearest military outpost, his enhanced body easily deflecting debris and stray weapons fire from panicked citizens. He vaulted over a collapsed wall, his tongue flicking out to taste the air, analyzing the complex mixture of fear, confusion, and drive that permeated the city. At the outpost, Hill pressed his hand against the control panel, his evolved tongue extending to interface directly with the computer systems. Information flooded his consciousness as he gained access to Denobula's planetary defense grid. Activating automated defense turrets, he announced, his voice carrying a metallic timbre. Targeting consortium vessels in sectors 3, 7, and 12. Across the city, Opal ascended a towering skyscraper, her skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. She reached the roof and extended her arms, projecting a massive holographic display of the approaching consortium fleet. Admiral Hartwell, she communicated through a hastily established link. I'm tracking 23 consortium ships entering low orbit. Their shield configurations are fluctuating. Opal's fingers danced through the air, manipulating energy fields with practiced ease. Suddenly, 3 consortium ships trailing the main group sparked and shuddered, their shields collapsing under her precise assault. The vessels spiraled downward, crashing into uninhabited areas outside the city limits. In orbit, the disabled Zarkon fleet had become a battleground. Consortium boarding parties swarmed the massive warships, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat with the recovering Zarkon crews. Energy weapons flashed in the confined corridors, and the vacuum of space claimed those unfortunate enough to be near hull breaches. On the planet's surface, Dr. Zena worked feverishly in her lab, surrounded by a team of scientists. She held up a small device, its surface glowing with a soft blue light. The suppression field emitter is ready, she announced, her antennae twitching with excitement. It should dampen the enhanced abilities within a 50-meter radius. Start mass production immediately and distribute them to emergency response teams. As the first wave of emitters left the lab, the ground beneath them trembled. Seismic sensors across the planet lit up, registering a dramatic increase in tectonic activity. The expanding Chorus entity, now covering several city blocks, pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Its tendrils interface with every available data source, processing the influx of information at an incomprehensible rate. A holographic projection materialized above the gelatinous mass, displaying a dire warning. Planetary core destabilizing. Estimated time to critical failure, 3 hours, 42 minutes. Admiral Hartwell's face paled as he received the report. He closed his eyes briefly, steeling himself for the decision he knew he had to make. This is Admiral Hartwell. He broadcast on all frequencies. Initiate immediate evacuation protocols for key scientific personnel and government officials. Destination Earth. We must preserve our knowledge and leadership. The announcement sparked instant outrage. Crowds gathered in the streets, their anger fueled by fear and a sense of abandonment. In the capital, a mob surged toward the spaceport, intent on preventing any ships from leaving. Amidst the chaos, several consortium raiding parties slipped past the planet's defenses, their stealth technology rendering them nearly invisible. They moved with practiced efficiency, targeting research facilities and government buildings. In one lab, a team of pirates subdued a group of mutated denobulans, securing them for transport and study. Hill, still connected to the defense grid, detected anomalous energy signatures moving through the city. "Opal," he called out, his voice tight with urgency. "We've got consortium infiltrators on the ground. Can you track them?" Opal's holographic display shifted, zooming in on several locations across the city. "I see them," she confirmed, "but there's something else." She trailed off as her attention was drawn to the pulsing mass of the chorus entity. Hill felt it too, an irresistible pull, as if the alien consciousness was calling out to them. "We need to go there," Opal said, her voice filled with certainty. "Whatever's happening, the chorus is at the center of it." They converged on the shimmering, gelatinous expanse, their bodies resonating with its energy field. As they approached, tendrils of the entity reached out to them, gently enveloping their forms. Hill looked at Opal, seeing his own mixture of fear and purpose mirrored in her eyes. "Together?" he asked, extending his hand. Opal nodded, interlacing her fingers with his. "Together." They stepped forward, allowing the chorus to envelop them fully. Their bodies began to dissolve, merging with the alien consciousness. As their individual forms faded, a surge of energy erupted from the combined entity, sending shockwaves across the planet and into space. The energy pulse rippled outward, catching the attention of a massive, ancient vessel hidden in the outer reaches of the solar system. Systems that had lain dormant for millennia hummed to life as the ship of the progenitors awakened. Within the merged consciousness of Hill, Opal, and the chorus, a vast ocean of knowledge and power surged. Their combined awareness expanded, encompassing the planet, the battling fleets in orbit and beyond. They sensed the approaching progenitor ship, recognizing it as a pivotal piece in a cosmic plan set in motion eons ago. As the ancient vessel began its approach to Denobula, the newly formed entity grappled with its newfound power and understanding. The fate of worlds hung in the balance as they prepared to confront the architects of life itself. As Hill and Opal merged with the chorus entity, the combined consciousness expanded rapidly, engulfing city blocks in a pulsating, gelatinous mass. The newly formed being, which came to identify itself as Trilix, vibrated with an unprecedented surge of knowledge and power. Trilix's awareness spread through the city, its tendrils extending deep into Denobula's crust. The entity's enhanced senses detected the source of the planet's instability, a chain reaction of exotic particles triggered by the earlier energy pulse. Without hesitation, Trilix began manipulating these particles, gradually stabilizing the volatile core. As Trilix worked to save the planet, chaos continued to unfold across Denobula. The Releft Consortium intensified its attacks, their stealth ships darting between buildings and evading defensive fire. In the main research center, alarms blared as a group of pirates led by Captain Zarka breached the security perimeter. Dr. Zena's antennae twitched nervously as she heard the sounds of combat drawing nearer. She quickly distributed the last batch of mutation suppression devices to her team. "Get these to the emergency response units immediately," she ordered, her voice tight with urgency. Just as the scientists began to move, the lab doors burst open. Captain Zarka, a towering figure with cybernetic enhancements glinting in the harsh light, strode in with her crew. "Nobody move," she growled, her artificial eye scanning the room. "We're here for the tech and the good doctor." Meanwhile, aboard his mobile command center, Admiral Hartwell received an urgent transmission from Earth. His face grew grim as he listened to the message. "Understood," he replied, his voice heavy. "We'll secure Hill and Opal at all costs." As he ended the transmission, Hartwell's attention was drawn to a new anomaly entering Denobula's atmosphere. The transformed Arcturian research vessel, now a living ship with the consciousness of Grand Scientist Zelthor, descended from the clouds. Its bioorganic form pulsed with energy as it projected a shimmering shield around key population centers. In orbit, the Zarkon fleet began to stir. General Crixus, his scaled skin reflecting the light of distant stars, reassessed the situation. Fascinating, he murmured, observing the events unfolding on the planet below. There may be more value here than we initially believed. Defensive formation now. As the various factions positioned themselves, Trilix extended its consciousness through denobulous communication networks. Simultaneously, it reached out to Admiral Hartwell, the Arcturian bioship, and General Crixus. "Hear me!" Trilix's voice resonated through their minds, a blend of Hill's dedication, Opal's analytical precision, and the Chorus entity's vast knowledge. "We face multiple threats that endanger us all. I propose an alliance to address these immediate dangers." To demonstrate its power, Trilix exerted control over the mutated population across Denobula. In an instant, the chaotic abilities that had thrown the cities into turmoil subsided. The sudden calm was palpable, even from orbit. Hartwell and Crixus exchanged wary glances through their video link. The Arcturian bioship pulsed with interest, Zelthor's consciousness spreading through its living circuitry as it considered the offer. "What do you propose?" Hartwell asked, his voice cautious but intrigued. Trilix's response was immediate. "I offer a portion of our knowledge and capabilities to each of you. In return, we must work together to repel the consortium, stabilize the planet, and prepare for the arrival of the progenitor ship." As negotiations proceeded, Trilix turned its attention to the Relef Consortium's raids. It tapped into Denobula's defense systems, tracking pirate ships with unparalleled accuracy. Across the planet, portals of shimmering energy appeared, allowing defender forces to rapidly deploy to raid sites. In the research center, Captain Zarka found herself suddenly cornered. Defensive units materialized through a nearby portal, their weapons trained on her team. Zarka's cybernetic eye whirred as she assessed the situation. In a fluid motion, she grabbed Dr. Zena, pulling the Denobulan scientist close and pressing an energy pistol to her head. "Nobody moves, or the doctor gets it," Zarka snarled, her artificial eye scanning for escape routes. "We're walking out of here nice and easy, or things get messy." Dr. Zena's antennae drooped in fear, but her voice remained steady. "Don't do anything rash, Captain. There's a better way to dedication this." As the hostage situation unfolded, Trilix processed countless scenarios, searching for a solution that would ensure Dr. Zena's safety without allowing the pirates to escape with crucial technology. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the system. The progenitor ship had entered the outer edges of Denobula's solar system. Its massive form sent gravitational waves rippling through space, threatening to destabilize the orbits of Denobula's moons. Trilix sensed the ancient intelligence aboard the approaching vessel. It began reconfiguring a portion of its gelatinous form, creating a complex array capable of communicating across vast distances and dimensions of consciousness. As the progenitor ship drew nearer, Trilix faced a pivotal moment. It had to maintain the planet's stability, solidify the fragile alliance, rescue Dr. Zena, repel the consortium raiders, and prepare for first contact with the architects of galactic life. The fate of Denobula, and perhaps the future of evolution itself, hung in the balance. Trilix extended its awareness, simultaneously focusing on multiple crises. It reached out to Captain Zarka, its voice resonating in her mind. "Your situation is untenable, Captain, but there may be a way for you to leave this encounter with something of value." As Zarka hesitated, Trilix continued its work, stabilizing Denobula's core and preparing for the cosmic encounter that would shape the destiny of countless worlds. Species, the fate of Denobula, and perhaps the future of evolution itself, hung in the balance. Trilix's consciousness expanded outward, its newly formed communication array pulsing with energy as it reached toward the approaching progenitor ship. The ancient vessel loomed at the edge of the Denobulan system, its massive form distorting the very fabric of space-time. A burst of complex energy patterns erupted from the progenitor ship, washing over Trilix's sensors. The merged entity processed the information at lightning speed, decoding layers of meaning within the cryptic transmission. There, assessing us, Trilix communicated to Admiral Hartwell and General Crixus. The progenitors want to determine if our evolutionary leap aligns with their grand design for life in the galaxy. Before either leader could respond, alarms blared throughout the system. The research center's security feeds displayed Captain Zarka, her cybernetic eye glowing ominously as she pressed an energy pistol against Dr. Zena's head. "I'm done playing games," Zarka snarled, her voice transmitting across all frequencies. "Give us safe passage off this rock, or I'll blow this entire facility sky high." She raised her other hand, revealing a small but potent explosive device. The tension in the room was palpable, with defensive units frozen in place, their weapons trained on the consortium raiders. Dr. Zena's antennae twitched nervously, but her eyes darted to a nearby console. In a swift motion, she reached out and slammed her palm against a glowing panel. A high-pitched whine filled the air as a prototype mutation suppression device activated. A wave of energy rippled through the research center. Pirates and defenders alike stumbled, their enhanced abilities flickering and fading. Captain Zarka's cybernetic implants sparked and sputtered, momentarily disrupting her aim. Seizing the opportunity, Trilix extended a tendril of its gelatinous form through the building's ventilation system. It snaked through the narrow passages, mapping the interior and pinpointing the locations of Dr. Zena and her captors. Simultaneously, the entity reached out to the Arcturian bioship hovering above the research center. "Zelthor," Trilix communicated, "we need to isolate the consortium forces. Can you disrupt their communications?" The living vessel pulsed in response, its bioorganic form shimmering as it generated a localized energy field. Static filled the pirates' comm channels, cutting off Captain Zarka from her fleet and any hope of reinforcements. General Crixus, his scaled skin glinting in the light of his command center, nodded in approval. "Impressive coordination," he growled. "Now, let the Zarkon show our worth to this alliance." A team of elite Zarkon commandos materialized near the research center, their advanced stealth technology rendering them nearly invisible. They moved with fluid precision, guided by Trilix's scans to a weak point in the building's defenses. As the rescue operation commenced, Trilix felt a surge of alien consciousness pressing against its own. The progenitor ship had begun a deep scan of the Nobula, its focus zeroing in on Trilix and the mutated population. The intensity of the scan sent electromagnetic pulses cascading across the planet. Power grids flickered, and communication systems crackled with interference. Trilix strained to maintain its connection to the various factions, while simultaneously engaging with the ancient beings. Inside the research center, chaos erupted. Trilix plunged the area into darkness, giving the Zarkon commandos the advantage. Pirates stumbled in the blackness, their suppressed abilities and disrupted senses leaving them vulnerable. Dr. Zena, her antennae quivering with dedication, slipped away from her disoriented captors. She navigated the familiar corridors with practiced ease, making her way to a secure laboratory. Inside, she began rapidly assembling equipment and chemicals. "I need to synthesize a more powerful version of the suppression compound," she muttered to herself, her hands moving with swift precision. "If we can disperse it through the atmosphere, we might be able to bring these mutations under control planet-wide." As Dr. Zena worked, Trilix felt its unified consciousness beginning to fragment. The individual components of its merged form, Hill, Opal, and the Chorus entity, pulled in different directions, their priorities diverging. Hill's military instincts urged immediate action against the consortium threat. Opal's analytical mind raced to process the progenitor's transmissions, seeking to understand their grand experiment. The Chorus entity pulsed with the raw power of evolution itself, tempted to push the boundaries of transformation even further. Trilix's form rippled and distorted, its gelatinous mass fluctuating as it struggled to maintain cohesion. The entity's voice, when it next communicated with Admiral Hartwell, was strained and disjointed. "Admiral," it said, the blended tones of Hill and Opal fighting for dominance, "we're experiencing instability. The progenitor scan is affecting our merged form. We need—" Before Trilix could finish, a new alarm blared across the system. The Releft Consortium flagship had broken formation, its engines flaring as it took up a position high above Denobula's atmosphere. "Energy buildup detected," reported a sensor officer aboard Hartwell's command center. "They're powering up some kind of weapon." Trilix's fragmented consciousness reeled as it processed the new threat. The Consortium's hidden weapon, a device capable of accelerating evolutionary mutations on a massive scale, hummed to life aboard the pirate flagship. As the weapon powered up, casting an eerie glow across the Denobulan sky, the Alliance faced a critical moment. They had mere minutes to neutralize the Consortium threat, complete the rescue operation, stabilize Trilix's fracturing consciousness, and prepare for the progenitor's impending judgment. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of Denobula, but potentially the course of evolution for all known species in the galaxy. The Alliance's resources were stretched to their limits, and time was running out. In the research center, Dr. Zena's hands flew over her equipment, racing to complete the enhanced suppression compound. The Zarkon commandos closed in on Captain Zarka's position, their weapons primed. And high above, the progenitor ship loomed, its ancient intelligence watching and waiting, ready to pass judgment on the culmination of eons of careful planning. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the future of life itself. As the stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the future of life, Trilix's unified consciousness began to fracture. The merged entity's gelatinous form covering several city blocks rippled and distorted, its once smooth surface now a chaotic sea of undulating shapes. Admiral Hartwell's voice crackled through the communication channels, his tone urgent but controlled. "All units, this is Admiral Hartwell. We have a critical situation developing. The Consortium flagship is powering up an unknown weapon. Prepare for immediate action." The Admiral's fingers flew across his command console, initiating a series of encrypted transmissions. Within moments, a squadron of Earth's most advanced stealth fighters launched from concealed hangars scattered across Denobula's surface. The sleek, angular vessels shimmered briefly as they engaged their cloaking systems, becoming nearly invisible against the planet's turbulent atmosphere. Inside the research center, the rescue operation reached its climax. Captain Krell, leader of the Zarkon commandos, signaled his team with a series of quick hand gestures. They moved with fluid precision, their scaled skin glistening under the flickering emergency lights. As the commandos breached the room where Captain Zarka held Dr. Zena hostage, chaos erupted. Zarka's cybernetic eye whirred frantically, scanning for escape routes. In that moment of distraction, Dr. Zena's hand shot out, slamming against a nearby console. A high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by a pulse of energy that swept through the room. Both pirates and Zarkon soldiers stumbled, their enhanced abilities flickering and fading. Captain Zarka's cybernetic implants sparked and sputtered, momentarily disrupting her aim. Seizing the opportunity, Dr. Zena wrenched herself free from Zarka's grasp. The Denobulan scientist dove for cover, her antennae quivering with a mix of fear and purpose. Zarka, quickly recovering, made a desperate lunge for the door, dragging Dr. Zena with her. But as they reached the threshold, a tendril of gelatinous material snaked through the air, wrapping around Zarka's legs. The pirate captain toppled, her grip on Dr. Zena loosening. Captain Krell's voice boomed through the chaos. "Secure the target. Protect the scientist." The Zarkon commandos surged forward, their weapons trained on the immobilized Zarka. In a flurry of motion, they subdued the pirate captain and pulled Dr. Zena to safety. As the hostage situation persevered, a blinding pulse of energy washed over Denobula. The progenitor ship's deep scan completed, sending cascading waves of disruption through every electronic system on the planet. Inside the gelatinous mass that was Trilix, the unified consciousness of Hill, Opal, and the Chorus entity shattered. The once cohesive form bubbled and churned, finally separating into three distinct beings. Hill emerged first, his body retaining a metallic sheen. He flexed his fingers, marveling at the way light played off his silvery skin. Beside him, Opal rose from the gelatinous remnants, her skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and changed with her every movement. The Chorus entity was the last to take shape, its form coalescing into a humanoid figure composed of shimmering, translucent material. It stood silently, its featureless face turned towards the sky where the progenitor ship loomed. In orbit, Earth's stealth fighters closed in on the Releth Consortium flagship. The pilots' voices were tense but focused as they relayed information. Target acquired. EMP weapons locked and ready. All units, fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. A barrage of advanced EMP weapons struck the pirate vessel, arcing across its hull in brilliant displays of electrical energy. The ship's systems flickered and died, its weapon powering down mid-charge. But the victory was short-lived. Alarms blared across the Allied communication channels as the consortium ship's power core began to destabilize. Alert! Cascade failure detected in the target's power core. Explosion imminent. Impact zone. Denobula's upper atmosphere. General Crixus's gravelly voice cut through the chatter. This is our moment. Zarkon battleship Kreethar, move to intercept. Contain that explosion and push it clear of the planet. The massive Zarkon vessel surged forward, its engines flaring bright against the backdrop of space. Powerful tractor beams locked onto the failing consortium ship, while energy shields expanded to envelop both vessels. On the surface, Hill, Opal, and the Chorus entity exchanged glances. Without words, they understood their role in the unfolding crisis. Hill's eyes glazed over as he interfaced with Denobula's defense systems, streams of data flowing through his mind. Opal raised her hands, her skin pulsing with intense light. She projected a stabilizing energy field towards the pirate ship, visible as a shimmering distortion in the sky above. The Chorus entity stood motionless, its translucent form rippling as it performed complex calculations, plotting the safest trajectory to dispose of the unstable vessel. As they worked in concert, the progenitor ship began its descent into Denobula's atmosphere. Its massive form blotted out the sun, casting an enormous shadow over the capital city. The ship's presence sent ripples through the planet's gravitational field, threatening to disrupt the delicate operation above. Admiral Hartwell's voice, strained but resolute, echoed across all channels. All forces stand down. I repeat, stand down. We are about to make first contact with the progenitors. The Admiral turned to his communication officer. Send a message to all Allied forces. We need to present a non-threatening posture. The next few moments could determine the fate of all our species. As the massive progenitor vessel continued its descent, it emitted a series of complex energy patterns. The sky above Denobula erupted in a dazzling display of auroras, while electronic systems across the planet fluctuated wildly. Hill, Opal, and the Chorus entity observed the patterns, their enhanced minds racing to decipher the alien communication. They shared a look of understanding, recognizing the monumental importance of this moment. Hill spoke, his voice tinged with a metallic resonance. We need to establish direct communication with the progenitors. It's our best chance to negotiate on behalf of Denobula and our allies. Opal nodded, her skin pulsing with excited patterns. I can manipulate the energy fields to amplify our signal, but we'll need a way to translate the complexity of their language. The Chorus entity stepped forward, its translucent form shimmering. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I possess the knowledge to construct a rudimentary translation matrix. Combined with your abilities, we may be able to bridge the gap between our species. As they began to construct their makeshift communication device, the progenitor ship came to a halt, hovering just above the capital city. Its surface shimmered with unknown energies, casting an otherworldly glow across the urban landscape. The Allied forces watched with a mixture of awe and trepidation as the architects of galactic life prepared to make their presence known. The fate of Denobula, Earth, and countless other worlds hung in the balance, awaiting the outcome of this unprecedented encounter. The progenitor ship's descent sent ripples through the atmosphere, its massive form casting an otherworldly glow across Denobula's capital city. As the ancient vessel hovered above, Hill, Opal, and the Chorus entities sprang into action, their newly separated forms moving with purpose and urgency. Hill's metallic skin gleamed as he interfaced with nearby technology, his enhanced mind processing vast streams of data. Opal's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with increasing intensity, her hands weaving complex patterns in the air as she manipulated energy fields. The Chorus entity, its translucent form shimmering, stood motionless as it performed intricate calculations. Together, they constructed an improvised communication device, a fusion of their unique abilities and knowledge. The device hummed to life, emitting a soft, pulsating glow that grew in intensity with each passing moment. Suddenly, a beam of light erupted from the device, stretching upward to connect with the progenitor ship. The sky above Denobula erupted in a dazzling display of colors, electronic systems across the planet fluctuating wildly in response. The connection triggered an unexpected reaction from the ancient vessel. A shimmering portal materialized at its base, defying the laws of physics as it stretched and warped. From this ethereal gateway, a group of progenitors descended towards the planet's surface. The progenitor's appearance sent waves of awe rippling through the gathered Alliance members. Tall, luminous beings with fluid-like bodies that constantly shifted and changed form, they radiated an aura of ancient wisdom and unimaginable power. Admiral Hartwell, his face a mask of controlled tension, strode forward to meet the descending beings. Beside him, General Crixus's scaled skin glistened in the otherworldly light, his posture rigid with a mix of anticipation and wariness. Grand Scientist Zelthor still merged with the Arcturian bioship, pulsed with a soft, organic glow as he joined the group. Dr. Zena hurried to join them, clutching a data pad containing her latest research on stabilizing the mutated population. Her antennae quivered with a mixture of scientific curiosity and trepidation as she approached the gathering. As the progenitors touched down, the air around them shimmered with hardly restrained energy. The lead being stepped forward, its form rippling like liquid starlight. When it spoke, the words seemed to bypass their ears entirely, resonating directly within their minds. "We are Nexus Prime," the being communicated, its thoughts carrying the weight of eons. "Your recent actions have triggered the next phase of our grand experiment in galactic evolution." Nexus Prime's gaze swept over Hill, Opal, and the Chorus entity. "Your merger, though now separated, represents an unprecedented leap in interspecies cooperation and biological advancement." Admiral Hartwell opened his mouth to speak, but Nexus Prime raised a fluid appendage, silencing him. However, this evolutionary jump has attracted the attention of a long-dormant threat. The Void Collective approaches. The assembled leaders exchanged alarmed glances. General Crixus's hand instinctively moved to his weapon, while Zelthor's bioship form rippled with agitation. Nexus Prime continued. "The Void Collective seeks to harvest advanced life forms to fuel their own twisted evolution. The energy pulse generated by your union," it gestured towards Hill and Opal, "has inadvertently signaled them. They are en route to the system." Admiral Hartwell stepped forward, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We propose a united defense against this threat. Our alliance stands ready to protect not just Denobula, but all life in this sector." General Crixus nodded, his gravelly voice filled with commitment. The Zarkon fleet pledges its full support. We will not allow these void collective creatures to threaten our hard-won peace. Zelthor's voice reverberated with a metallic undertone as the bioship spoke through him. The Arcturian bioship offers its adaptive technology to enhance our defensive capabilities. Nexus Prime's form shimmered, its thoughts tinged with approval. We will assist in your defense, but direct intervention could have unforeseen consequences for your natural evolution. Instead, we offer to unlock the latent potential within your champions. The progenitor turned its attention to Hill and Opal. You two have already undergone significant transformations. We can grant you access to abilities beyond your current state, but the process is not without risk. As Hill and Opal exchanged glances, considering the offer, Dr. Zena stepped forward. Her antennae twitched excitedly as she spoke. I've made a breakthrough in my research. The combination of my mutation suppression technology and the progenitor's stabilizing energy pulse has created a unique opportunity. She activated her data pad, projecting a holographic display of complex molecular structures. By carefully manipulating this combination, we can grant controlled evolutionary advancements to volunteers among our forces. It could create an army capable of standing against the Void Collective. Nexus Prime's form pulsed with interest. A bold proposition, Doctor. The risks are significant, but so too are the potential rewards. Hill stepped forward, his metallic skin gleaming. We volunteer to undergo the procedure first. Our previous transformations make us ideal candidates to test this new evolution. Opal nodded, her bioluminescent patterns swirling with tenacity. We understand the risks, but we cannot stand idle while this threat approaches. The chorus entity moved to join them, its translucent form rippling. I offer my knowledge to assist in optimizing the process. My observations of countless evolutionary paths across the galaxy may prove valuable in this endeavor. As the group began to move towards the research facility, alarms blared across the city. Admiral Hartwell's communicator crackled to life, a sensor officer's voice filled with urgency. Admiral, long-range sensors have detected the Void Collective's fleet. They've entered the outer reaches of the Denobulan system. Sir, they're ships. They're like nothing we've ever seen. Biomechanical constructs, warping the very fabric of space-time around them. Admiral Hartwell's teeth gritted. He turned to General Crixus. General, we need to buy time. Can your fleet move to intercept? Crixus nodded, already activating his command interface. The Zarkon battle group stands ready. We'll hold the line while you complete this evolutionary procedure. As Crixus coordinated the fleet's movements, Dr. Zena led Hill and Opal into a specially designed chamber within the research facility. The air crackled with energy as she initiated the procedure, combining her mutation suppression technology with the progenitor's evolutionary catalysts. Hill and Opal's bodies began to glow, their forms shifting and changing as the process took hold. Their minds linked once again, but this time the connection extended far beyond just the two of them. They began to perceive the thoughts and emotions of the entire alliance, from the nervous excitement of the Denobulan citizens to the unyielding commitment of the Zarkon warriors preparing for battle. Outside the chamber, the chorus entity monitored the process, its fluid form making real-time adjustments to the evolutionary matrix. Nexus Prime observed with great interest, recognizing that the outcome of this procedure could shape the future of life in the galaxy. As the transformation reached its climax, Hill and Opal's bodies emitted a blinding light. The chamber filled with a radiant energy that forced everyone in the vicinity to shield their eyes. The very air seemed to vibrate with potential, the fate of galaxies hanging in the balance as the light slowly began to fade. The intense radiance subsided, revealing two figures emerging from the chamber, their forms dramatically altered by the evolutionary procedure. Hill stepped forward, his metallic skin now shimmering with iridescent patterns that shifted and changed with each movement. As he surveyed the room, his body seamlessly adapted to the surroundings, blending perfectly with the metallic walls of the research facility. His tongue, now a highly sophisticated sensory organ, darted out, tasting the air and analyzing its composition in seconds. Beside him, Opal's transformation was equally striking. Her once bioluminescent skin had evolved into a living energy field, crackling with power. Her eyes, now multifaceted, scanned the room, perceiving layers of reality invisible to others. As their gazes met, their mental link flared to life, stronger and more encompassing than ever before. They found themselves not only connected to each other, but also to the entire Alliance force, their minds joining a vast network of consciousness. Admiral Hartwell's voice cut through their thoughts, tense and urgent. "Hill, Opal, we need you on the bridge immediately. The Void Collective has entered Denobula's orbit." Without a word, the pair moved in perfect synchronization, their enhanced bodies allowing them to traverse the facility with inhuman speed and grace. As they reached the command center, they were met with a scene of controlled chaos. The main view screen displayed a terrifying sight. The Void Collective's fleet had arrived, their biomechanical ships twisting the very fabric of space around them. The vessels looked like monstrous amalgamations of flesh and metal, pulsing with an otherworldly energy that distorted everything in their vicinity. Admiral Hartwell stood at the center of the bridge, his face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. "General Crixus," he commanded, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Engage the Collective's vanguard. Earth fighters, prepare for hit-and-run attacks on their flanks." Through their enhanced mental network, Hill and Opal could sense the commitment and fear coursing through the Alliance forces. They watched as the Zarkon fleet, led by General Crixus, surged forward to meet the Void Collective head-on. The space around Denobula erupted into a dazzling display of weapons fire and energy discharges. Grand Scientist Zelthor's voice resonated through the command network, tinged with the strange harmonics of the Arcturian bioship. "Moving into position now. Our adaptive technology is already working to counter their space-time distortions." The massive bioship glided into view, its organic hull rippling as it adjusted to the chaotic environment. It positioned itself as a mobile command center, coordinating the Alliance's efforts against the invaders. On the planet's surface, Dr. Zeno worked feverishly, administering the evolutionary treatment to volunteer soldiers from various Alliance species. Hill and Opal could sense the transformation of each individual through their mental link, feeling the surge of new abilities and the disorientation that came with them. The progenitors, led by Nexus Prime, added their own formidable powers to the defense. Streams of energy flowed from their fluid forms, coalescing into shimmering barriers around Denobula. The protective fields pulsed with ancient power, slowing the Void Collective's approach and interfering with their ship's functions. Admiral Hartwell turned to Hill and Opal, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. "We need you to lead a strike team into the heart of the Void Collective's fleet. Your mission is to infiltrate their flagship and disable their command structure. It's our best chance to repel this invasion." Hill nodded, his iridescent skin rippling with anticipation. Opal's energy field intensified, small arcs of power dancing across her form. Through their mental link, they quickly assembled a team of newly evolved Alliance members, each chosen for their unique abilities. As they boarded their specially modified ship, designed to pierce through the Void Collective's distortion field, Hill and Opal felt the weight of responsibility settle upon them. The fate of Denobula, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on the success of their mission. The ship launched, streaking away from the relative safety of the Alliance lines and plunging into the chaotic maelstrom surrounding the Void Collective fleet. Hill's enhanced senses went into overdrive, guiding their pilot through the treacherous, ever-shifting space-time distortions. Opal stood at the fore of the ship, her multifaceted eyes perceiving the multiple dimensions of space around them. With precise gestures, she manipulated her energy field, creating a protective bubble around their vessel. Enemy fire dissipated harmlessly against the shimmering barrier, while the ship's integrity held firm against the crushing forces of distorted space-time. As they neared the Void Collective's flagship, a new threat emerged. The enemy launched a counterattack, deploying twisted, corrupted versions of Alliance species. These beings, their bodies warped by the Collective's perverse evolution, swarmed towards the strike team's ship, intent on boarding and destroying it. Hill's skin shifted, blending perfectly with the ship's interior as he prepared for close-quarters combat. Opal's energy field intensified, forming solid constructs ready to repel the invaders. The rest of the strike team took up defensive positions, their newly acquired abilities primed for action. The first of the Void Collective's boarders breached the airlock, their grotesquely altered forms filling the corridor with an otherworldly presence. Hill struck with lightning speed, his extensible tongue lashing out to analyze, and then disable the lead attacker. Opal created energy barriers, corralling the invaders into kill zones where the rest of the strike team could pick them off. The battle raged on, mirroring the larger conflict unfolding around Denobula. Through their mental link, Hill and Opal coordinated their team's efforts while staying connected to the broader Alliance forces. They could sense the ebb and flow of the space battle, feel the strain on the progenitor's defensive barriers, and hear the urgent communications between Alliance commanders. As they fought off the last of the boarders, their ship finally reached the outer hull of the Void Collective's flagship. The massive vessel loomed before them, a nightmarish construct of biomechanical horror that seemed to devour the very light around it. Hill and Opal exchanged a glance, their mental link conveying volumes in an instant. They had reached their target, but the real challenge was just beginning. With a shared nod of grit, they prepared to lead their team into the unknown depths of the enemy vessel. The airlock hissed open, revealing the alien interior of the Void Collective's flagship. Hill's adaptive camouflage shifted to match the organic metallic walls, while Opal's energy field pulsed in response to the ship's strange emissions. Together, they stepped into the heart of the enemy's stronghold, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them within. The airlock sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and Hill and Opal found themselves immersed in the alien environment of the Void Collective's flagship. The interior was a nightmarish fusion of organic matter and advanced technology, pulsating with an otherworldly rhythm. Hill's iridescent skin immediately shifted, adapting to match the undulating walls. He moved forward, his enhanced senses on high alert. "The corridors are constantly changing," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We need to stay close." Opal nodded, her energy field crackling around her. She extended her power, creating a protective bubble that enveloped the entire strike team. "I'm shielding us from the toxic atmosphere," she said, her multifaceted eyes scanning the surroundings. "But be careful. There are defense mechanisms everywhere." As they advanced deeper into the ship, the corridors twisted and reshaped themselves, as if trying to confuse and disorient the intruders. Hill's camouflage allowed him to blend seamlessly with each new configuration, scouting ahead for potential threats. Suddenly, a section of the wall pulsed and expelled a cloud of microscopic particles. Opal's energy barrier flared, disintegrating the hostile swarm before it could reach the team. "Nice save," Hill said, his tongue darting out to analyze the residue. "Some kind of nanite weapon. This ship is alive and very much aware of our presence." They pressed on, navigating through a labyrinth of ever-shifting passages. The further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to close in, pulsing with malevolent intent. After what felt like hours of careful navigation, they entered a vast chamber that stretched beyond their field of vision. Row upon row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a being from a different species across the galaxy. "By the stars," one of the strike team members gasped, his newly evolved eyes widening in horror. Hill approached one of the pods, his adaptive skin rippling with unease. He extended his tongue, now a sophisticated sensory organ, to analyze the contents. What he discovered sent a chill through his enhanced nervous system. "These beings," he said, his voice tight with revulsion, "they're undergoing forced evolution. The Void Collective is transforming them into some kind of hybrid creatures." Opal moved to his side, her energy field fluctuating in response to her distress. "We need to free them," she said, her multifaceted eyes taking in the grotesque transformations occurring within the pods. As the strike team began working to disable the stasis pods, a low hum filled the chamber. The far wall shimmered and parted, revealing a massive biocomputer, the flagship's central control node. The node pulsed with malevolent intelligence, and suddenly the air was filled with a swarm of nanobots, pouring from every surface of the chamber. They coalesced into a seething mass, intent on assimilating the intruders. "Defensive positions," Hill shouted, his metallic skin hardening to resist the nanobots' attempts at infiltration. Opal's energy field expanded, creating a crackling barrier that disrupted the swarm's cohesion. The rest of the strike team sprang into action, their newly evolved abilities proving crucial in the face of this overwhelming threat. One member exhaled a cloud of corrosive gas, melting waves of nanobots. Another's skin erupted in razor-sharp spines, shredding any that came too close. Hill and Opal moved in perfect synchronization, their mental link allowing for flawless coordination. Hill's adaptive camouflage confused the nanobots' targeting systems, while Opal's energy manipulation kept the swarm at bay. As the battle raged, Hill noticed a pattern in the nanobots' movements. "They're being controlled by the biocomputer," he realized. "If I can interface with it, maybe I can shut them down." Opal nodded, understanding his intent through their link. She created a path through the swarm, her energy field carving a safe route for Hill to approach the pulsating node. Hill reached the biocomputer and placed his hand on its surface. His enhanced senses allowed him to interpret the complex data flows coursing through the organic circuitry. What he discovered sent a shock through his system. "The Void Collective," he said, his voice filled with a mix of horror and awe. "They're trying to create a perfect life form. They're combining traits from every species in the galaxy." As this revelation sank in, Opal's multifaceted eyes widened. Her perception, now capable of seeing beyond normal space-time, revealed something crucial. "Hill," she called out, her voice urgent, "I can see energy conduits connecting all the collective ships. If we disrupt this network, we might be able to sever their hive mind." Hill's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We could use the biocomputer to send a surge through the network," he said, his fingers already working to interface more deeply with the node. "But it would require a direct connection. The risks." Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew what had to be done. As the battle around them intensified, with waves of partially transformed captives now joining the fray, Hill and Opal made their decision. They would interface with the biocomputer together, using their unique bond and combined abilities to initiate the surge. The strike team formed a defensive perimeter around them, fighting off the onslaught of nanobots and twisted former captives. Hill and Opal stood before the pulsating mass of the biocomputer, their hands intertwined. In that moment, their mental link deepened beyond anything they had experienced before. Their consciousness merged, their evolved forms resonating in perfect harmony. They were no longer two separate beings, but a single entity of unimaginable potential. With a shared breath, they reached out and connected with the biocomputer. Energy coursed through their joined bodies, their forms glowing with an otherworldly light. As they began the process of overloading the collective's network, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. The fate of the stars hung in the balance as Hill and Opal, now one in mind and spirit, fought to turn the tide against the Void Collective. The outcome of their audacious attempt remained uncertain, but in this moment of perfect unity, they had never felt more alive or more powerful, or more determined. The energy coursing through their joined bodies intensified, their forms bathed in a radiant, pulsating light that grew brighter with each passing second. As the surge of power flowed between them and the biocomputer, Hill and Opal's physical forms began to shift. Their bodies, already evolved beyond their original states, started to merge in a reflection of their mental bond. Skin and energy field blended together, creating a hybrid entity that defied easy categorization. The strike team, witnessing this incredible transformation, quickly formed a protective circle around their leaders. They faced outward, using their newly acquired abilities to fend off the relentless waves of partially transformed captives and swarms of nanobots that threatened to overwhelm them. One team member exhaled a thick cloud of corrosive gas, melting incoming nanobots into useless sludge. Another skin erupted in a forest of razor-sharp spines, shredding any enemies that came too close. Each member utilized their unique powers in perfect synergy, buying precious time for Hill and Opal to complete their dangerous mission. Within the eye of this storm, the merged form of Hill and Opal delved deeper into the Void Collective's vast network. Their consciousness expanded, racing through pathways of data and energy. They uncovered the true extent of the Collective's invasion plans, including a list of targeted worlds and the locations of other fleets poised to strike across the galaxy. Without hesitation, they transmitted this crucial intelligence to Admiral Hartwell and the Alliance forces through their mental network. The information flowed out in a burst of data, providing the Alliance with a strategic advantage they desperately needed. As Hill and Opal's hybrid form interfaced more deeply with the biocomputer, an unexpected reaction rippled through the flagship. The ship's organic components began to respond to their evolved physiology, recognizing it as a superior form of life. This recognition spread like wildfire through the Collective's network, causing a cascading effect as the Central Intelligence struggled to reconcile this new data with its existing directives. Seizing this moment of confusion, Hill and Opal initiated the energy surge. The pulse raced through the conduits connecting all Collective vessels, overloading systems and severing the hive mind's control. Across the battlefield, Void Collective ships began to lose cohesion, their reality-warping fields collapsing as the coordinating intelligence faltered. The strike team felt the change immediately. The onslaught of enemies became less coordinated, more chaotic. They pressed their advantage, pushing back against the weakening forces of the Collective. Outside the flagship, the Alliance forces sprang into action. Earth stealth fighters darted between the larger Collective ships, their pilots taking advantage of the faltering defenses to target key systems with surgical precision. The Zarkon fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of advanced weaponry, their shots now unimpeded by the Collective's defensive fields. Back on the flagship, the biocomputer systems began to overload from the strain of Hill and Opal's interface. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as the organic and technological components started to break down. The merged couple, realizing the danger, attempted to disengage from the machine. To their horror, they found their hybrid form physically bonded to the ship's organic components. The strike team, seeing their leaders in peril, rushed to help separate them from the failing biocomputer. As they struggled to free Hill and Opal, the flagship's internal structures started to collapse around them. The energy surge had triggered a chain reaction, causing the ship's components to disintegrate. The alarms grew more insistent, warning of an imminent core breach that could destroy the entire ship and potentially damage nearby Allied forces. Working frantically, the strike team managed to sever Hill and Opal's connection to the biocomputer. The couple's hybrid form began to separate, their individual bodies slowly reforming. However, the process remained incomplete, leaving them in a semi-merged state that combined aspects of both their evolved forms. With the flagship falling apart around them, the strike team began a desperate evacuation. They guided the freed captives towards escape pods, fighting through collapsing corridors and malfunctioning defense systems. Hill and Opal, still recovering from their ordeal, used their new hybrid abilities to clear a path for the evacuees. Despite their physical separation, their actions remained perfectly synchronized, a testament to their unbreakable bond. As the last of the strike team and captives boarded the escape pods, Hill and Opal faced a critical decision. The flagship's core was reaching critical levels, threatening to explode and potentially reignite the Void Collective's network. They realized that someone must remain behind to ensure the complete destruction of the biocomputer and prevent any chance of the collective reforming. In a moment of unspoken understanding, Hill and Opal chose to stay aboard the doomed flagship. Their hybrid physiology, they believed, gave them the best chance of surviving long enough to complete this final, crucial task. As the escape pods launched, carrying the strike team and freed captives to safety, Hill and Opal made their way to the ship's core. The corridors around them twisted and buckled, the very fabric of the vessel seeming to rebel against its impending destruction. Arcs of energy crackled along the walls, and the air grew thick with the acrid smell of burning circuitry. Hand in hand, their partially merged forms moving in perfect unison, Hill and Opal pressed on towards the heart of the dying flagship. They knew the risks, understood the sacrifice they might be called upon to make. But in this moment, as they prepared to face the final challenge that could end the Void Collective's threat once and for all, they felt no fear. Only an unwavering grit to see their mission through to its conclusion, whatever the cost. As they approached the ship's core, the true extent of their transformation became apparent. Their partially merged bodies continued to evolve, adapting to the increasingly hostile environment around them. Hill's metallic skin rippled and shifted, extending its protective properties to encompass Opal's energy manipulation field. The result was a shimmering, iridescent shell that deflected falling debris and shielded them from the toxic fumes permeating the air. Opal's multifaceted eyes scanned the twisting corridors ahead, her enhanced perception guiding them through the maze of pulsating organic matter. "The structure is becoming unstable," she warned, her voice a harmonious blend of their two timbers. "We need to hurry." Hill nodded, his movements perfectly synchronized with Opal's. They navigated through the ship's dying innards, their footsteps leaving faint luminescent trails in their wake. The walls around them oozed and writhed, as if the very essence of the Void Collective fought against its impending demise. As they rounded a final corner, the core chamber came into view. But before they could reach it, a group of monstrous figures blocked their path. These were the Void Collective's elite guards, their bodies twisted beyond recognition by extreme genetic manipulation. Unlike the rest of the Collective's forces, these abominations remained unaffected by the energy surge that had crippled the fleet. The guards attacked without hesitation, their mutated limbs lashing out with frightening speed. Hill and Opal moved as one, their hybrid form responding with fluid grace. Hill's extensible tongue, now crackling with Opal's energy manipulation abilities, whipped through the air. It struck the nearest guard, disrupting the creature's biotech enhancements and causing it to stumble. Opal raised her hands, creating shimmering energy constructs that mimicked Hill's adaptive camouflage. The translucent forms danced around the guards, confusing and disorienting them. One guard, its multiple eyes spinning wildly, lashed out at a decoy, only to find its claws passing through empty air. The battle raged on, a furious exchange of blows and energy blasts. Hill and Opal's hybrid form proved to be a formidable opponent, their combined abilities allowing them to anticipate and counter each attack. As they fought, the ship's core pulsed ominously, sending waves of energy rippling through the chamber. "The core is destabilizing," Hill observed, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to shut it down before it reaches critical mass." Opal nodded, her energy field expanding to push back the remaining guards. "Let's do it together," she said, reaching out to interface with the core's control systems. Their hybrid physiology allowed them to bypass the collective safeguards with ease. As they delved deeper into the ship's biocomputer, they encountered vast data banks containing the collective knowledge and experiences of all the species assimilated by the Void Collective. In a split-second decision, Hill and Opal began downloading the data into their hybrid consciousness. The influx of information was overwhelming, threatening to overload their already strained minds and bodies. They struggled to contain and process the vast amount of knowledge while simultaneously working to neutralize the ship's core. As the download neared completion, the core's instability reached a critical point. Energy tendrils lashed out, striking their hybrid form with searing intensity. The impact threatened to tear their merged bodies apart prematurely, a potentially fatal outcome in their current state. Hill gritted his teeth, fighting against the pain and the risk of dissolution. We can't separate yet," he gasped, focusing all his will on maintaining their hybrid form. Opal's consciousness intertwined with his, their shared grit acting as an anchor. "Just a little longer," she managed, her energy field fluctuating wildly as she worked to complete the core's shutdown sequence. With a final surge of effort, they succeeded. The ship's systems began to power down, and the organic components started to rapidly decay. Their hybrid body, weakened by the ordeal, trembled with exhaustion. "We did it," Hill breathed, relief flooding through their shared consciousness. "But we need to get out of here. Now." Using the last reserves of their energy, they created a protective bubble around themselves. The camouflage adapted to mimic the ship's deteriorating structure, allowing them to navigate through the collapsing corridors undetected. As they raced through the dying flagship, their newly acquired knowledge guided them to a viable escape route. The ship's outer hull began to rupture, the vacuum of space pulling at the weakening structure. Just when it seemed they might be trapped, they spotted an undamaged escape pod. With a final burst of speed, they forced their way inside, their hybrid form barely fitting through the pod's entrance. As they sealed the hatch, the flagship's final collapse began. The pod launched into space, narrowly avoiding the expanding debris field. But they weren't safe yet. A massive shockwave from the disintegrating ship caught up to them, battering the small vessel with intense energy and radiation. Hill and Opal's hybrid form acted as a living shield, absorbing the brunt of the impact to protect the pod's vital systems. The strain proved too much, and they felt their merged body beginning to separate. As the energy wave passed, they found themselves returned to their individual forms, but forever changed. Hill's metallic skin now showcased intricate patterns of Opal's bioluminescence, while her energy field took on properties of his adaptive camouflage. The escape pod, damaged by the shockwave, drifted in the vastness of space. Hill and Opal, weakened but alive, realized their ordeal was just getting started. As they worked to activate the pod's distress beacon, a new presence made itself known in their mental link, a remnant of the Void Collective's consciousness, trapped within the downloaded data, and now fighting for survival within their shared mindscape. Hill's eyes met Opal's, a mixture of exhaustion and tenacity reflected in both their gazes. They had survived the destruction of the Void Collective's flagship, but a new battle was just beginning, one that would take place within the confines of their own minds. Their shared experience aboard the Void Collective's flagship had forged a connection deeper than either could have imagined, but now that bond was being tested by an unexpected intruder. As the escape pod drifted through the vastness of space, Hill and Opal felt their transformed bodies begin to stabilize. The initial shock of their separation had subsided, replaced by a new awareness of their altered physiology. Hill flexed his fingers, watching as the metallic sheen of his skin rippled with faint bioluminescent patterns. Opal's energy field flickered and pulsed, now tinged with a camouflage-like shimmer. Their moment of respite was short-lived. A foreign presence stirred within their shared mindscape, its alien consciousness probing at the edges of their thoughts. Hill's eyes widened as he recognized the unmistakable signature of the Void Collective. "Opal," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Do you feel that?" She nodded, her multifaceted eyes narrowing in concentration. "It's trying to take control. We need to contain it." Together, they focused their minds, drawing upon the strength of their mental bond. They visualized barriers, thick walls of impenetrable thought, pushing back against the invasive presence. The remnant of the Void Collective's consciousness lashed out, but Hill and Opal stood firm, their combined will creating a fortress around their shared mind. As they battled this internal threat, Hill's gaze fell upon the escape pod's control panel. A thought struck him, born from the vast repository of knowledge they had downloaded from the collective's databanks. "The distress beacon," he said, his voice filled with sudden inspiration. "We can amplify it using our own energy." Opal caught on immediately, her hands already moving to reconfigure the pod systems. "It's risky," she warned. "We don't know how it will affect our bodies." Hill nodded grimly. "We don't have a choice. It's our only chance of rescue." Working in perfect synchronization, they rerouted power from non-essential systems and created a feedback loop with their own bioenergy. As they channeled their combined strength into the beacon, their partially merged forms began to fluctuate. Hill felt his limbs stretching, merging with Opal's energy field, then snapping back to solidity. Opal gasped as her bioluminescence flared, her body momentarily becoming translucent before regaining its form. The process was excruciating, pushing their transformed bodies to their limits. Yet they persevered, focusing on maintaining the amplified signal. Minutes stretched into hours, each moment a battle against exhaustion and the ever-present threat of the collective remnant in their minds. Just as their strength was about to give out, a ping from the pod sensors cut through their shared agony. A ship was approaching, Zarkon in design. The Zarkon vessel, its sleek hull gleaming in the starlight, moved cautiously towards the escape pod. On its bridge, Captain Krell studied the readings with a mix of curiosity and concern. "The energy signature is unlike anything I've ever seen," he muttered, his scaled fingers tapping a rapid rhythm on the command console. "Prepare the quarantine chamber. We don't know what we're dealing with here." As the tractor beam locked onto the pod, Hill and Opal felt a wave of relief wash over them. They had been found, but their ordeal was far from finished. The pod was drawn into the Zarkon ship's hangar, where a team in protective suits waited to receive them. The moment the pod's hatch opened, Hill and Opal were enveloped in a containment field. They offered no resistance as they were escorted to the quarantine chamber, their bodies still recovering from the strain of powering the distress beacon. Captain Krell observed them through the chamber's viewport, his reptilian features set in a grave expression. "Contact Admiral Hartwell and Dr. Zenna," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them we've recovered Hill and Opal, but they've been changed." In the quarantine chamber, Hill and Opal sat side by side, their transformed bodies a testament to their incredible journey. As the Zarkon ship set course for the Denobulan Research Facility, they braced themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. The remnant of the Void Collective still lurked in their minds, a constant reminder of the battle they had yet to win. Dr. Zenna's voice crackled over the ship's comm system, her tone a mixture of concern and scientific curiosity. "Keep them stable," she instructed. "We'll be ready to receive them when you arrive." As the stars streaked by outside the viewport, Hill turned to Opal, their hands intertwining. In that moment of contact, their partially merged forms pulsed with renewed energy. They knew that whatever trials awaited them at the research facility, they would face them together. The journey to Denobula was marked by intense physical reactions as their bodies continued to adapt to the massive influx of alien data. Hill's skin hardened into a metallic shell, then softened into a pliable, energy-infused membrane. Opal's bioluminescence flared in waves, her internal organs shifting and reconfiguring to process new forms of energy. The Zarkon medical team watched in awe and trepidation as the transformed couple underwent these dramatic changes. Instruments beeped and whirred, struggling to keep up with the rapid alterations in their physiology. As they approached the denobulan system, Hill and Opal began to sift through the vast repository of knowledge stored in their minds. Images of distant worlds flashed before their eyes, accompanied by tactical data and the locations of other Void collective fleets. "We need to tell them," Opal said, her voice strained from the effort of containing the information. "The Alliance needs to know what's coming." Hill nodded, his metallic features set with persistence. "As soon as we land, we'll request a secure channel to Admiral Hartwell." The Zarkon ship descended through Denobula's atmosphere, the research facility coming into view. A team of scientists, led by Dr. Zena, waited on the landing pad, their expressions a mix of anticipation and apprehension. As the ship touched down, Hill and Opal steeled themselves for what lay ahead. They had survived the destruction of the Void Collective's flagship and the perilous journey through space, but their greatest challenges and opportunities were only just beginning. The ship's landing ramp descended, and Hill and Opal were escorted out by the Zarkon medical team, their bodies still fluctuating between solid and energy states. As they stepped onto denobulan soil, a wave of nervous anticipation washed over them. Dr. Zena approached, her eyes wide with a mixture of scientific curiosity and concern. "Welcome to Denobula," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We've prepared a specialized containment area for your examination." Hill and Opal were led to a secure chamber within the research facility, its walls lined with advanced sensors and energy-dampening fields. As they settled into the room, a familiar presence entered, Nexus Prime, the progenitor leader. The towering being of shimmering energy moved with fluid grace, its form pulsing with an otherworldly light. Hill felt a strange resonance within his transformed body, as if his very cells were responding to Nexus Prime's presence. "Fascinating," Nexus Prime's voice echoed in their minds. "Your transformation is unlike anything we've encountered before." The progenitor leader began a thorough analysis, using scanning technology that penetrated to the cellular level. As the examination progressed, Hill and Opal's bodies reacted in unexpected ways. Hill's metallic skin developed intricate, swirling patterns that mirrored Nexus Prime's shimmering appearance. Opal's bioluminescent energy field expanded, enveloping them both in a soft, pulsating glow. Nexus Prime's interest grew. "Your genetic structure is adapting to my presence. This level of molecular plasticity is extraordinary." As the scans delved deeper, probing their neural pathways, a sudden surge of alien consciousness overwhelmed Hill and Opal's minds. The Void Collective remnant, dormant until now, seized control of their motor functions. Hill felt his body move against his will, lunging towards Nexus Prime. Opal's energy field crackled with malevolent intent. Together, their merged form attacked the progenitor leader, driven by an insatiable desire to assimilate its advanced genetic structure. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Security teams rushed to contain the situation, but Hill and Opal's hybrid form proved formidable. They lashed out with tendrils of energy, keeping the guards at bay. In a nearby command center, Admiral Hartwell watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens. "Activate emergency containment protocols," he ordered, his voice tense with urgency. Dr. Zena, realizing the gravity of the situation, sprang into action. She hurried to her lab, quickly synthesizing a new batch of her mutation suppression compound. Loading the formula into a specialized injector, she rushed back to the examination chamber. As she entered, Hill and Opal's Void collective controlled form turned its attention to her. A tendril of energy lashed out, striking Dr. Zena and sending her sprawling across the floor. The injector skittered away, just out of reach. Nexus Prime, demonstrating previously unseen defensive capabilities, generated a pulsating energy field. The field enveloped Hill and Opal, temporarily immobilizing them. "Now, Doctor," the progenitor leader called out. Ignoring the pain from her injury, Dr. Zena lunged for the injector. She scrambled to her feet and approached the immobilized couple. With a steady hand, she pressed the device against their merged form and activated it. The suppression compound surged through Hill and Opal's bodies. Their hybrid form convulsed, energy crackling around them as the treatment took effect. Slowly, agonizingly, their bodies began to separate. As the Void Collective's influence receded, Hill and Opal found themselves lying on the chamber floor, gasping for breath. The realization of what had just occurred hit them like a physical blow. What happened?" Hill managed to ask, his voice hoarse. Dr. Zena, leaning against a nearby console for support, replied, "The Void Collective remnant in your minds took control. We had to use a strong suppression compound to neutralize it." Admiral Hartwell's voice came over the intercom, his tone grave. "Hill, Opal, are you back with us?" "Yes, Admiral," Opal responded, her multifaceted eyes filled with remorse. "We're in control. For now." The examination chamber buzzed with activity as medical staff tended to Dr. Zena's injuries and security personnel secured the area. Nexus Prime stood silently, observing Hill and Opal with an unreadable expression. Admiral Hartwell entered the room, his face a mask of concern and hardly restrained frustration. "We need to discuss your situation," he said. "The security risk you pose is significant." As Hill and Opal struggled to process the implications of their actions, a technician burst into the room. "Admiral," he said, breathless with urgency, "long-range sensors have detected a new Void Collective fleet approaching Alliance space." The news hit like a shockwave. Hill and Opal exchanged a look, their partially merged minds racing with the same thought. They possessed vital intelligence about the Void Collective, information that could be crucial in the coming battle. "Admiral," Hill said, his voice steadying with persistence, "we have a proposal." "Admiral," Hill said, his voice steadying with persistence, "we have information that could be crucial in this fight. The Void Collective remnant in our minds. It's a gold mine of tactical data." Admiral Hartwell's eyes narrowed, weighing the potential benefits against the obvious risks. After a moment of tense silence, he nodded. "What do you propose?" Hill and Opal exchanged a glance, their partially merged minds synchronizing. Opal spoke up, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with commitment. "We can infiltrate the approaching fleet. Our transformed bodies give us a unique advantage. We can blend in with their biomechanical ships." The room erupted in a flurry of discussions and objections. Dr. Zena stepped forward, her face etched with concern. "It's too dangerous. The suppression compound is barely holding the collective influence at bay." Nexus Prime's ethereal form pulsed with interest. "Perhaps not. With some modifications, we could create a version of the compound that allows controlled access to their enhanced abilities." Admiral Hartwell paced the room, his mind racing through the possibilities and potential catastrophes. Finally, he turned to face Hill and Opal. "This is a high-risk operation, but it might be our best shot. You have my approval." What followed was an intense preparation process that pushed Hill and Opal to their limits. Dr. Zena worked tirelessly in her lab, fine-tuning the suppression compound. Nexus Prime supervised a series of controlled energy bursts, stabilizing their transformations and enhancing their ability to merge and separate at will. The process was excruciating. Hill felt his cells tear apart and reform countless times, each burst of progenitor energy sending waves of agony through his body. Opal's bioluminescence flared erratically, her form fluctuating between solid and energy states. As they underwent this grueling regimen, General Crixus arrived with a team of Zarkon engineers. They brought with them advanced cloaking technology, which they painstakingly integrated into Hill and Opal's transformed physiology. This will allow you to mimic the energy signatures of Void Collective ships, Crixus explained, his scaled fingers deftly adjusting a control panel. But remember, it's not foolproof. You'll need to rely on your adaptive abilities to maintain the illusion. Days blurred together as Hill and Opal pushed themselves to master their new capabilities. They practiced merging into a form that closely resembled a Void Collective scout ship, learning to balance their individual consciousnesses with a suppressed collective remnant. On the eve of their mission, Admiral Hartwell presented them with a final piece of equipment, a specially designed communication device. This will allow you to transmit data directly from your merged consciousness to our command center, he explained. It's designed to be undetectable by collective sensors. The launch of their mission coincided with a diversionary attack led by General Crixus. As the Zarkon fleet engaged the outer defenses of the approaching Void Collective Armada, Hill and Opal slipped past the enemy's perimeter. Their merged form glided silently through the chaos of battle, sensors on high alert. As they penetrated deeper into the collective fleet, they encountered a sight that chilled them to their core. Vast chambers filled with captive beings from various species, their bodies systematically broken down and reformed into Void Collective components. Hill felt a surge of revulsion, nearly losing control of their merged form. Opal's consciousness steadied him, their shared horror crystallizing into renewed purpose. Using their ability to interface with Void Collective technology, they accessed the fleet's central database. What they discovered sent a shock through their merged consciousness. Plans for a massive invasion of Earth and its colonies, set to begin within days. As they delved deeper, they uncovered information about an entity known as the Overmind, a colossal biomechanical construct serving as the central intelligence for the entire collective. Their data gathering was interrupted by a group of elite collective guards, their bodies twisted into nightmarish forms. Hill and Opal's merged form lashed out with tendrils of energy, combining Hill's adaptive defense mechanisms with Opal's energy manipulation abilities. The battle raged through the bowels of the collective ship, their merged form proving formidable against the guards. However, the prolonged fight strained their control over the Void Collective remnant in their minds, causing momentary lapses in their coordination. A vicious blow from one of the guards damaged their communication device, cutting off their direct link to the Alliance Command Center. Realizing their only hope lay in reaching the Overmind and using its communication array, Hill and Opal fought their way towards the center of the fleet. Their merged form began to destabilize as the suppression compound in their system broke down under the stress. Moments of involuntary separation left them vulnerable, forcing them to adapt rapidly to avoid detection. With a desperate push, they created a massive disruption in the Void Collective's power distribution network, buying them the time they needed to reach the Overmind's chamber. As they entered, they were confronted with a sight that defied comprehension, a vast, pulsating mass of merged consciousness, containing the essences of billions of assimilated beings. The sheer scale and complexity of the Overmind threatened to overwhelm their senses. Hill and Opal felt a powerful psychic pull, attempting to draw their merged consciousness into the collective. They struggled to maintain their individuality, their bodies fluctuating between human and hybrid forms. In this moment of crisis, their deep emotional connection became their anchor. Their partially merged forms intertwined, consciousnesses aligning in perfect harmony. This profound intimacy not only strengthened their dedication, but seemed to unlock new potential within their transformed physiology. With time running out and the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, Hill and Opal prepared to interface directly with the Overmind. Their merged consciousness expanded, reaching out to touch the vast, alien intellect that controlled the Void Collective. As their minds made contact, they were plunged into a mental battle unlike anything they had ever experienced. The Overmind's consciousness crashed over them like a tidal wave, threatening to sweep away their individuality, identities. The Overmind's consciousness crashed over them like a tidal wave, threatening to sweep away their sense of self. But in that moment of crisis, Hill and Opal's unique bond became their anchor. Their merged consciousness expanded, reaching out to touch the vast, alien intellect that controlled the Void Collective. As their minds made contact, they were plunged into a mental battle unlike anything they had ever experienced. Within the Overmind's consciousness, Hill and Opal found themselves adrift in a sea of fragmented memories and alien thought patterns. The sheer scale of the hive mind threatened to overwhelm them, but their hybrid physiology allowed them to navigate the chaotic network of assimilated minds. They pushed deeper, searching for weaknesses in the Overmind's control. Their presence caused ripples of instability throughout the collective, manifesting as malfunctions in nearby void ships. Biomechanical components sparked and sputtered, their synchronized movements becoming erratic. Sensing the intrusion, the Overmind initiated its defense protocols. In the physical chamber, biomechanical tendrils erupted from the walls, lashing out to restrain Hill and Opal. Their merged forms shifted and adapted, using their combined abilities to evade capture. Hill's metallic skin hardened to deflect attacks, while Opal's energy manipulation created shimmering barriers that deflected the grasping appendages. As the mental battle intensified, their physical bodies began to show signs of strain. Their merged form fluctuated, occasionally separating into their individual selves before re-merging. This instability attracted the attention of nearby Void Collective drones, which converged on the Overmind's chamber to defend their leader. Within the hive mind, Hill and Opal discovered fragmented memories from countless assimilated species. They sifted through the information, piecing together the Void Collective's weaknesses. They identified critical points in the hive mind structure and focused their efforts on attacking these vulnerabilities. The Overmind reeled from this internal assault, its vast network of connections beginning to fray. A distress signal broadcast to all Void Collective units, carrying traces of Hill and Opal's hybrid consciousness. This unexpected intrusion caused confusion among the assimilated beings, sparking moments of free will in drones that had long been under complete control. As chaos spread through the collective, Hill and Opal's physical forms underwent rapid, uncontrolled transformations. Their bodies cycled through various alien physiologies absorbed from the Overmind, threatening to tear them apart at a cellular level. They struggled to maintain their core identities amidst this biological turmoil. In the Alliance Command Center, Dr. Zena monitored the situation with growing alarm. Her instruments detected dangerous fluctuations in Hill and Opal's vital signs. Working feverishly, she synthesized a new stabilizing compound based on data from their previous transformations. The doctor transmitted the formula to the nearest Zarkon ships, urging them to find a way to deliver the treatment. Inside the Overmind's chamber, Hill and Opal's merged consciousness reached a critical point. They accessed the collective central control protocols, initiating a shutdown sequence that would sever the hive mind's connection to its drone ships. However, this action triggered a failsafe within the Overmind, designed to preserve its existence at all costs. Energy began to surge through the chamber as the failsafe protocol drew power from nearby Void Collective ships. The sudden influx threatened to overwhelm Hill and Opal's minds, pushing them to the brink of permanent assimilation into the collective. Their physical bodies, trapped in a cycle of rapid transformations, started to lose cohesion. As the situation grew dire, a small team of Zarkon commandos, led by Captain Krell, fought their way into the Overmind's chamber. They carried Dr. Zena's stabilizing compound, persistence etched on their alien features. The commandos battled through waves of void drones, their advanced weapons carving a path through the chaos. Hill and Opal, their consciousness still locked in combat with the Overmind, became aware of the Zarkon team's approach. Using the last reserves of their control over their physical form, they created an opening in their fluctuating body. Captain Krell seized the opportunity, injecting the stabilizing compound directly into their shared biomass. The effect was immediate. Hill and Opal's uncontrolled transformations halted, and their mental barriers against the Overmind's influence strengthened. With their hybrid forms stabilized, they redoubled their efforts to complete the collective shutdown sequence. Their combined will push through the Overmind's weakening defenses, overwhelming the alien intelligence. As the shutdown sequence neared completion, the Overmind made a final, desperate attempt to preserve itself. It initiated a self-destruct protocol, intending to take Hill, Opal, and a significant portion of the Void collective fleet with it. Energy began to build within the chamber, creating a rapidly expanding field of destructive force. Realizing the imminent danger, Hill and Opal disengaged from the Overmind's consciousness. They used their enhanced abilities to create a protective bubble around themselves and the Zarkon commandos. Captain Krell activated an emergency teleportation device, attempting to transport the group to safety as the chamber began to collapse around them. The teleportation beam engaged just as the Overmind self-destruct sequence reached its climax. Hill and Opal's merged form, still encasing the Zarkon team, was caught in the confluence of energies from the teleportation device and the explosive chain reaction. The group vanished from the chamber in a blinding flash of light, their fate uncertain as the Overmind's destruction began to ripple through the Void collective fleet. In the vacuum of space surrounding the collective armada, Alliance ships detected a massive energy surge. Admiral Hartwell watched in awe as sections of the enemy fleet began to go dark, their synchronized movements falling into disarray. But amidst the chaos, his thoughts turned to Hill and Opal, whose signal had vanished in the final moments of the confrontation. As the Overmind's destruction rippled through the Void collective fleet, a blinding flash engulfed Hill, Opal, and the Zarkon commandos. The conflicting energies of the teleportation beam and the explosive chain reaction swirled around them, distorting space-time itself. In an instant, they materialized on the deck of Admiral Hartwell's flagship, crashing onto the metal surface in a tangled heap of limbs and biomechanical components. Alarms blared as medical teams rushed to their aid, pushing through the chaos of the battle-ready bridge. "Get them to medbay now." Admiral Hartwell's voice cut through the commotion. His eyes widened as he caught sight of Hill and Opal's merged form beginning to separate, their individual bodies slowly reforming amidst a writhing mass of unstable hybrid tissue. Emergency treatments were administered on the spot, stabilizing compounds pumped into their systems as they were rushed to the medical bay. Dr. Zena's voice crackled over the intercom. "Prepare for immediate surgery. We need to balance their fluctuating physiologies before cellular breakdown occurs." As Hill and Opal fought for stability on the operating table, the Alliance fleet engaged the now disorganized Void collective forces. Admiral Hartwell watched the tactical display, noting with grim satisfaction as enemy ships drifted aimlessly or turned on each other. "General Crixus, initiate Operation Shattered Mirror," Hartwell commanded. "Target their command vessels and communication relays. Without the Overmind, we can dismantle their remaining defenses systematically." The space around them erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire as Earth's stealth fighters wove through the chaos, their skilled human pilots executing precision strikes against key collective targets. The vast canvas of space became a deadly ballet of explosions and debris. In the medical bay, Dr. Zena arrived breathless, her eyes wild with dedication. She pushed past the medical staff, a vial of iridescent liquid clutched in her hand. "Clear the area," she ordered, approaching Hill and Opal's convulsing forms. "This is a refined version of the stabilizing compound. It should help balance their physiologies and prevent further cellular degradation." As the doctor administered the compound, Hill and Opal's bodies began to calm, their erratic transformations slowing. Zena's team immediately began the delicate process of extracting and cataloging the vast amount of data the couple had absorbed from the Overmind. "Their neural pathways are overloaded with collective data," one of the technicians reported. "It's a gold mine of strategic information, but it's putting immense strain on their hybrid physiology. Hours passed as the battle raged outside. Hill and Opal's eyes fluttered open, their vision clearing to reveal the stark white ceiling of the medical bay. They tried to sit up, only to find their bodies responding in unexpected ways. Hill's metallic skin crackled with electrical energy, small objects around him beginning to float, as if caught in a localized electromagnetic field. Opal's hands glowed with an otherworldly light, the very air around her seeming to bend and distort. "Easy," Dr. Zena cautioned, gently pushing them back onto their beds. "Your bodies have undergone further changes. You've developed new abilities, but they're highly unstable. We need to run more tests before." Her words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral Hartwell's voice boomed over the intercom. "All hands to battle stations. Void Collective Scout ships have breached Earth atmosphere. I repeat, enemy forces have reached Earth." Hill and Opal exchanged a look of dedication, their new abilities momentarily forgotten in the face of this dire news. They attempted to stand, but their legs buckled beneath them, their bodies still weak from the ordeal. "You're in no condition to fight," Dr. Zena insisted, but her protests were drowned out by another announcement. "Dr. Zena to the bridge immediately," Hartwell's voice commanded. "And bring Hill and Opal if they're conscious. We need every advantage we can get." As they were helped to the bridge, supported by medical staff, Hill and Opal could feel something stirring within them. The residual influence of the overmind, like a dormant virus awakening, began to manifest in involuntary transformations. Their arms would suddenly sprout void collective biomechanical components, only to revert to human form moments later. On the bridge, Admiral Hartwell turned to them, his face a mask of dogged commitment. "I know you're not at full strength, but we need your unique abilities. The Earth Defense Force is engaged in the Collective Scouts, but we've detected a new threat." He gestured to a holographic display showing a cluster of Void Collective ships moving in unison, their tactics far more sophisticated than the other fragmented enemy forces. "They're calling themselves the Autonomous Collective," Hartwell explained. "Former drones who regained some individual consciousness. They're using strategies we've never seen before, and they're tearing through our defenses." Hill and Opal stepped forward, their bodies shimmering with impossibly strong energy. "We'll do whatever it takes," Admiral Hill said, his voice distorted by another involuntary transformation. "Dr. Zena, is there any way to stabilize their condition for combat?" Hartwell asked. The doctor hesitated, her mind racing through possibilities. "There might be," she said slowly, "but it's risky. We could use their residual collective programming to our advantage, broadcast a disruptive signal to the enemy ships. But it could further destabilize their physiology." "Do it," Opal said, her eyes glowing with an inner fire. "Earth depends on it." As Dr. Zena and her team rushed to prepare the necessary equipment, Hill and Opal were fitted with specially designed containment suits. The sleek, form-fitting armor hummed with energy, helping to regulate their transformations and channel their new powers more effectively. "These suits will help," Dr. Zena explained, making final adjustments. "But they're not a permanent solution. You'll need to be careful out there." Admiral Hartwell approached them, his face etched with concern and respect. "We've prepared a modified fighter for you. It's designed to amplify your hybrid powers and serve as a mobile broadcasting station for the disruptive signal. Are you ready?" Hill and Opal nodded, their hands intertwining as they felt their bodies sink in a familiar way. Despite the chaos around them and the uncertainty of their own conditions, they found strength in their connection. As they made their way to the launch bay, alarms continued to blare. The ship shuddered under enemy fire, a stark reminder of the battle raging outside. Hill and Opal climbed into their specially modified fighter, the cockpit adapting to their hybrid physiology. "Remember," Dr. Zena's voice came through their comms, "the disruptive signal is our best chance at turning the tide. But be prepared for unexpected reactions from your own bodies. If you feel you're losing control, return to the flagship immediately. The launch bay doors opened, revealing the chaos of the space battle beyond. Hill and Opal's fighter hummed to life, pulsing with the combined energy of their hybrid powers and the advanced technology surrounding them. "Good luck," Admiral Hartwell's voice crackled through the comms. "The fate of Earth may well rest in your hands." With a burst of energy, their fighters shot out into the fray, immediately beset by enemy fire and the swirling debris of destroyed ships. Hill and Opal's merged consciousness guided their vessel through the mayhem, their new abilities allowing them to sense and react to threats with superhuman speed. As they dove deeper into the heart of the battle, they activated the disruptive signal. Pulses of electromagnetic and gravitational energy radiated from their craft, causing nearby void collective ships to shudder and lose formation. But their success was short-lived. The autonomous collective, seemingly immune to the disruptive effects, turned their full attention to Hill and Opal's fighter. A swarm of enemy ships converged on their position, their weapons charged and ready to unleash devastation. Hill and Opal's containment suits began to spark and smoke, the strain of continuous power use pushing them to their limits. Their merged forms started to destabilize, threatening to tear apart their fighter from the inside out. As the autonomous collective closed in, Hill and Opal faced a critical decision: continue their mission and risk complete physiological breakdown, or retreat and potentially lose their one chance to turn the tide of the battle. With Earth's fate hanging in the balance, they pushed their hybrid bodies to the brink, their fighter weaving through a storm of enemy fire as they sought a way to complete their objective before it was too late. Late, the fighter shuddered violently as another barrage of enemy fire battered its shields. "We're losing control," Hill shouted, his hands fused with the ship's controls as he struggled to maintain their course. Opal's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as she focused her powers on reinforcing their defenses. "The containment suits can't take much more of this," she warned, her voice strained. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked their craft, sending it into an uncontrolled spin. Warning alarms blared as the ship's systems began to fail one by one. Hill and Opal's merged form flickered and pulsed, their hybrid physiology threatening to tear itself apart. "We need to land," Hill grunted, fighting against the G-forces as he scanned for any safe haven in the chaos of the battle. Opal spotted a nearby asteroid, its cratered surface offering a slim chance of survival. "There," she called out, using her gravitational powers to nudge their trajectory towards the rocky mass. The fighter craft plummeted towards the asteroid, trailing smoke and debris. With a bone-jarring impact, it skidded across the surface, coming to rest in a deep crater. The sudden stop caused Hill and Opal's merged form to separate violently, their containment suits rupturing from the force. Exposed to the vacuum of space, Hill and Opal gasped as their bodies began to transform rapidly. Hill's skin crackled with electrical energy, while Opal's form seemed to bend and warp the very fabric of space around her. "Can't breathe," Opal choked out, her lungs struggling to adapt to the airless environment. Hill reached out with his newfound electromagnetic abilities, desperately trying to create a barrier between them and the harsh void. A shimmering field of energy began to form around them, flickering unstably as he fought to maintain it. "Hold on," he urged, his voice distorted by the rapid changes overtaking his body. "I'll try to keep us safe." Opal focused her concentration, manipulating the gravitational forces around them to anchor their bodies to the asteroid's surface. The strain of using their powers in such extreme conditions was overwhelming, and both could feel their consciousness slipping away. Aboard the flagship, alarms blared as Dr. Zena's monitors detected Hill and Opal's life signs on the asteroid. She rushed to the bridge, her face pale with concern. "Admiral Hartwell," she called out, "I've located Hill and Opal. They've crashed on an asteroid, and their vitals are critical. We need to mount a rescue operation immediately." Hartwell nodded grimly, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Dispatch a rescue team and divert a squadron for cover fire. We can't lose them now. As the rescue ship sped towards the asteroid, Hill and Opal's condition continued to deteriorate. Their bodies cycled through a nightmarish array of transformations, each shift bringing new waves of pain and disorientation. In a moment of clarity, Hill managed to focus his electromagnetic powers, sending out a pulsing distress signal. The energy drained him almost completely, and he slumped against Opal's shimmering form. "Stay with me," Opal whispered, her own consciousness fading as she struggled to maintain their gravitational anchor. The rescue ship touched down on the asteroid's surface, its crew moving with practiced efficiency. They rushed towards Hill and Opal, carrying Dr. Zena's prototype stabilization devices. As the team approached, they were met with a terrifying sight. Hill and Opal's bodies were shifting uncontrollably, their forms barely recognizable as human. The rescue team quickly attached the stabilization devices, sighing in relief as the rapid transformations began to slow. "We've got them," the team leader reported back to the flagship. "Initiating emergency transport now." No sooner had Hill and Opal been secured in the rescue ship's medical bay than a group of autonomous collective vessels descended upon them. The ship's pilot executed a series of evasive maneuvers, but several direct hits landed, crippling their engines. "We're losing power," the pilot shouted over the comm, "and we're being pulled into the gravity well of that gas giant." In the medical bay, Hill and Opal stirred, their bodies still racked with pain, but their minds clearing. They exchanged a look of drive, their mental link allowing them to communicate without words. Hill reached out with his electromagnetic abilities, focusing on the ship's power core. With a surge of effort, he managed to jumpstart the systems, bringing the engines back online. Simultaneously, Opal extended her gravitational control, creating a field around the ship that helped stabilize its trajectory. The combined effect of their powers gave the rescue ship the precious seconds it needed to regain control and break free from the gas giant's pull. As Alliance reinforcements arrived to drive off the autonomous collective attackers, the rescue ship limped back towards the flagship. Hill and Opal lay exhausted in the medical bay, their bodies still shifting between human and alien forms, but at a much slower rate. Back on the flagship, Admiral Hartwell received the news of their successful rescue with visible relief. "Get them to the containment chamber immediately," he ordered, "and prepare for the next phase of our attack. We need to use every advantage we have." As Hill and Opal were rushed to the specially prepared containment chamber, Dr. Zena and her team worked feverishly to stabilize their condition. The chamber hummed with energy, its advanced systems helping to regulate the couple's unstable physiology. Slowly, Hill and Opal's bodies began to settle into a more consistent state. As they regained full consciousness, they became aware of a profound change in their mental connection. Thoughts and sensations flowed between them with startling clarity, even as they lay physically separated. "I can feel your mind," Hill said in wonder, his voice still carrying an otherworldly resonance. Opal nodded, her eyes glowing faintly. "It's like we're still merged, but more. I can sense echoes of the collective, too. It's overwhelming." Dr. Zena, monitoring their vital signs, leaned in with interest. "This enhanced connection could be the key to turning the tide of battle," she said, her mind racing with possibilities. "If we could amplify and broadcast your link, we might be able to disrupt the autonomous collective's coordination." Hill and Opal exchanged a glance, feeling the weight of the decision before them. They knew the risks involved, but also understood the potential to end the conflict and save countless lives. "We'll do it," they said in unison, their merged consciousness already preparing for the challenges ahead. As the flagship's engineering team began modifying the communication array, the autonomous collective launched a renewed offensive. The Alliance fleet found itself pushed to the brink, with Earth's fate hanging in the balance. In the containment chamber, Hill and Opal steeled themselves for what was to come. Their bodies, now a unique blend of human and alien physiology, pulsed with untapped power. As they were connected to the modified communication array, they knew that the next few moments would determine the outcome of the war, and possibly the future of humanity itself. The modified communication array hummed to life, channeling Hill and Opal's enhanced connection. A wave of electromagnetic and gravitational energy pulsed outward, rippling through space. The effect on the autonomous collective was immediate and devastating. Enemy ships began to falter, their coordinated movements dissolving into chaos. The Alliance fleet, seizing the opportunity, pressed their advantage. Admiral Hartwell's voice rang out over the comms. All ships, engage. Push them back. As the tide of battle turned, Hill and Opal's merged consciousness expanded, allowing them to sense the ebb and flow of the conflict. Through their enhanced perception, they guided Alliance ships through the melee, anticipating enemy movements and revealing weaknesses in their formation. Hours passed in a blur of intense concentration and exhaustion. Finally, the last of the autonomous collective ships either retreated or were disabled. A cheer erupted across the Alliance fleet as the realization of victory set in. In the aftermath, cleanup operations began. Admiral Hartwell ordered a thorough sweep of the battlefield, his voice firm but tinged with relief. Neutralize any remaining enemy vessels and rescue potential survivors. We can't leave anything to chance. As Alliance ships combed through the debris, Dr. Zena monitored Hill and Opal's vital signs. The couple's bodies had begun to stabilize, their rapid transformations slowing to a more manageable pace. She watched in fascination as their physiology settled into a unique hybrid state, neither fully human nor entirely alien. Remarkable, she murmured, studying the data streaming across her screens. Your bodies have achieved a level of equilibrium I never thought possible. Hill blinked slowly, his mind still reeling from the intensity of the merged state. What does that mean for us, Doctor? Before Dr. Zena could respond, a transmission cut through the air. Admiral, we've discovered an intact Void Collective Scout ship near the edge of the combat zone. It appears to be dormant but largely undamaged. Hartwell's eyes narrowed. Secure that vessel immediately. Dr. Zena, I want you to lead a team of engineers to investigate. This could be our chance to gather crucial intelligence. Dr. Zena nodded, her scientific curiosity piqued. She turned to Hill and Opal, her expression softening. Rest now. We'll continue your examinations once I return. As Dr. Zena departed with her team, Hill and Opal were left to process the events of the past few hours. Their bodies tingled with residual energy, a constant reminder of their transformation. Opal flexed her fingers, watching as small distortions in space rippled around them. Hill, she whispered, I can feel the gravity around us. It's like I can shape it. Hill nodded, his own senses overwhelmed by the electromagnetic fields permeating the room. He reached out, focusing his mind, and watched as a nearby datapad flickered to life. And I can interface with technology in ways I never imagined. As they explored these newfound abilities, Dr. Zena and her team boarded the Void Collective Scout ship. The interior was a maze of biomechanical components, pulsing with dim, residual energy. Fascinating, Dr. Zena breathed, running her scanner over the ship's systems. The integration of organic and synthetic elements is far more advanced than we realized. Her team worked methodically, gathering data and samples from every corner of the vessel. As they delved deeper into the ship's database, they stumbled upon a treasure trove of information. Doctor, you need to see this, one of the engineers called out. We found detailed biological data on various assimilated species, including humans and Zarkons. Dr. Zena's eyes widened as she scanned through the files. This could explain so much about Hill and Opal's transformation. And look here. There are aspects of human and Zarkon physiology we never knew existed. As the team continued their investigation, Hill and Opal underwent a series of medical examinations aboard the flagship. The tests confirmed what they had begun to suspect. Their bodies had integrated aspects of both human and void collective biology, resulting in a stable hybrid state. Admiral Hartwell, upon receiving the preliminary reports, recognized the potential implications immediately. He called a meeting with key Alliance representatives to discuss the next steps. The discovery of this void collective database, combined with Hill and Opal's unique condition, presents us with unprecedented opportunities, Hartwell began. However, it also raises serious questions about security and ethics. The room erupted into heated debate. Earth's representatives argued for extensive study of Hill and Opal's abilities, citing potential military applications. The Zarkon delegation expressed concern about the weaponization of such enhanced beings. As discussions continued, Hill and Opal found themselves at the center of a growing storm of interest and speculation. Scientists from various Alliance worlds clamored for the chance to study their hybrid physiology, while military strategists saw them as potential game changers in future conflicts. Recognizing the need for a controlled environment to study the long-term effects of their transformation, Admiral Hartwell made a decision. "We'll establish a dedicated research facility on a remote space station," he announced. Hill and Opal will be transferred there under Dr. Zena's supervision, along with a team of multi-species specialists. As preparations for the new facility began, Hill and Opal grappled with the reality of their situation. Their bodies, once familiar, now harbored extraordinary abilities that were only beginning to manifest. Hill discovered he could generate complex electromagnetic fields, creating temporary force barriers and disrupting electronic systems at a distance. Opal learned to manipulate the curvature of space-time, enabling short-range teleportation and the formation of gravitational lenses. Their mental link, forged in the heat of battle, remained strong. Thoughts and emotions flowed between them with startling clarity, deepening their connection in ways they were only starting to understand. As they prepared for transfer to the research facility, Hill and Opal stood together, watching the stars through a viewport. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and full of unknowns. "Whatever happens," Hill said softly, taking Opal's hand, "we face it together." Opal nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Together," she agreed, as something entirely new. The research facility awaited, along with the promise of discovery and the challenge of defining their place in a rapidly changing universe. As the flagship prepared for the journey, Hill and Opal steeled themselves for the next chapter in their extraordinary transformation. Odyssey. As they settled into their new quarters at the research facility, Hill and Opal found themselves at the center of an intense scientific investigation. Dr. Zena and her team worked tirelessly, conducting a battery of tests to understand the full extent of the couple's hybrid physiology. Days blurred into weeks as they underwent countless scans, blood draws, and physical examinations. One morning, as Hill and Opal prepared for another round of tests, Dr. Zena burst into their room, her eyes alight with excitement. "We've made a breakthrough," she announced, clutching a datapad to her chest. The couple exchanged a curious glance. "What kind of breakthrough?" Hill asked, his voice tinged with both hope and apprehension. Dr. Zena took a deep breath, composing herself. "It's about your reproductive compatibility. Our latest analysis shows that your gametes have stabilized. There's a real possibility you could conceive a child together." The news hit them like a shockwave. Opal's hand instinctively went to her abdomen, her palms sweating with possibilities. Hill's electromagnetic senses picked up on her sudden spike of emotion, and he reached out to steady her. "A child?" Opal whispered, her voice barely audible. "But how is that even possible?" Dr. Zena launched into an explanation, her words tumbling out in a rush of scientific jargon. She spoke of mutated genes, adaptive physiological changes, and the unique interplay between their human and Zarkon DNA. As the reality of the situation sank in, Hill and Opal found themselves facing a decision they never thought they'd have to make. The possibility of starting a family, of creating a life that was a true blend of their species, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Over the next few days, they underwent a series of specialized tests. Opal's reproductive system showed remarkable adaptations, her body seemingly preparing itself to nurture a hybrid embryo. Hill's sperm cells displayed enhanced motility and resilience, likely a result of his transformation. As news of their potential fertility spread, the research facility buzzed with activity. New specialists arrived daily, geneticists, xenobiologists, and medical experts from across the Alliance. The medical wing expanded, filled with state-of-the-art equipment designed to monitor and support an interspecies pregnancy. Hill and Opal spent long hours in counseling sessions discussing the implications of their decision. They pored over genetic projections, risk assessments, and potential developmental scenarios for their hypothetical child. "Are we ready for this?" Opal asked one night, as they lay in bed, her fingers tracing patterns on Hill's chest. Hill closed his eyes, focusing on the comforting thrum of Opal's bioelectric field. "I don't know if anyone can ever be truly ready for something like this," he admitted. "But if we decide to do it, we'll face it together." After weeks of deliberation and consultation, they made their choice. With a mix of trepidation and dedication, Hill and Opal began a series of fertility treatments tailored to their unique physiologies. The process was intense. Carefully timed hormone therapies left Opal feeling alternately energized and exhausted. Hill underwent treatments that involved targeted electromagnetic pulses to enhance his reproductive function. Their physical intimacy took on new dimensions. Guided by their enhanced sensory abilities and strengthened mental link, their lovemaking became an exploration of their hybrid bodies' capabilities. Hours would pass as they lost themselves in the ebb and flow of pleasure, their merged consciousness amplifying every sensation. As their attempts at conception continued, the research facility faced an unexpected challenge. A group of extremists, vehemently opposed to interspecies relationships, launched a sophisticated cyber attack on the facility's systems. Alarms blared as the attackers attempted to sabotage medical equipment and access sensitive data about Hill and Opal's physiology. Hill's electromagnetic senses immediately picked up on the intrusion. "We're under attack," he shouted, leaping from bed and racing to the nearest computer terminal. His fingers flew over the keys as he worked to counter the incursion. Opal joined him, her gravitational powers coming into play as she physically isolated compromised hardware, creating localized singularities to contain the spread of malware. The facility security team scrambled to respond, but it was Hill and Opal's swift action that prevented any significant damage or data loss. As the dust settled, Admiral Hartwell's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression grim. "I'm implementing increased security measures immediately," he announced. "We can't risk another attack like this." In the days that followed, a team of elite Alliance soldiers arrived to bolster the facility's defenses. Advanced security systems were installed, creating layers of protection against both physical and cyber threats. Amidst the heightened security and ongoing fertility treatments, Dr. Zena made an announcement that would change everything. Early tests indicated that Opal might be pregnant. The news sent shockwaves through the research facility. Hill and Opal found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity as medical teams prepared for extensive monitoring throughout the gestation period. As they underwent the first round of detailed scans, Hill and Opal held hands tightly, their mental link buzzing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. On the monitor before them, a small cluster of cells pulsed with life, the first confirmed human Zarkon hybrid embryo. Dr. Zena's voice was filled with awe as she pointed out the unique genetic structures visible even at this early stage. "Look here," she said, indicating a swirling pattern of DNA. We're seeing a perfect blend of human and Zarkon characteristics, along with some traits that must be from your void collective transformations. As the implications of what they were seeing sank in, Hill felt a surge of electromagnetic energy course through his body. To his surprise, he realized he could sense the faintest whisper of neural activity from the developing embryo. "I can feel it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Opal, I can actually sense our child's mind forming." Opal squeezed his hand, tears glistening in her eyes. As they gazed at the image of their growing child, they knew their lives would never be the same. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges and unknowns, but they faced it together, united by their love and the miracle of new life growing within Opal's womb. As the weeks passed, Opal's pregnancy progressed smoothly, with regular checkups and monitoring from Dr. Zena and her team. By the time Opal entered her third trimester, the research facility had transformed into a hive of activity. Scientists and medical professionals from across the Alliance worked around the clock, preparing for the birth of the first human Zarkon hybrid child. One evening, as Hill and Opal relaxed in their specialized living quarters, a sudden tremor shook the room. The lights flickered and the hum of machinery grew louder. Hill's electromagnetic senses flared. "Something's wrong," he said, jumping to his feet. Opal winced, placing a hand on her swollen belly. "The baby. I think it's causing this." Before Hill could respond, the room plunged into darkness. Emergency lights sputtered to life, casting an eerie red glow over their surroundings. Alarms blared as facility technicians rushed to restore power. Hill used his abilities to scan the electrical systems, his face creased with concentration. "It's a massive power surge," he reported. "The baby's abilities are overloading the grid." Dr. Zena's voice crackled over the intercom. "Hill, Opal, are you all right? We're working to stabilize the environmental controls in your quarters." "We're fine," Opal called back, her voice strained. "But the baby's really active. I can feel pulses of energy." Hill placed his hand on Opal's abdomen, using his electromagnetic senses to monitor the fetus. "The neural activity is off the charts," he said, awe and concern mingling in his voice. As the facility staff worked to restore systems, Dr. Zena arrived at their quarters, her face etched with worry. "We need to develop a way to contain these energy emissions," she said, running a scanner over Opal's belly. "The fetus's abilities are growing faster than we anticipated." Over the next few days, Dr. Zena collaborated with Hill to design a specialized containment field. They worked tirelessly, combining Hill's intimate knowledge of electromagnetic manipulation with cutting-edge Alliance technology. "We need to calibrate it perfectly," Hill muttered, adjusting a series of complex equations on a holographic display. "Too strong, and it could harm the baby. Too weak, and we risk more power surges." Dr. Zena nodded, her fingers flying over a control panel. "Let's run another simulation. We can't afford any mistakes." After numerous tests and refinements, they finally had a working prototype. The containment field hummed to life around Opal's bed, a shimmering barrier barely visible to the naked eye. Opal sighed with relief as the field activated. "It feels calming," she said, running a hand over her belly. "Like a gentle embrace." As the due date approached, Admiral Hartwell implemented heightened security measures. Additional Alliance soldiers arrived, their presence a constant reminder of the momentous event about to unfold. 2 weeks before the estimated delivery date, Opal woke in the middle of the night, her body racked with contractions. "Hill," she gasped, clutching his arm. "It's time." Hill's eyes widened as he felt a surge of electromagnetic activity from the fetus. He quickly alerted Dr. Zena and the medical team. The delivery room buzzed with activity as doctors and nurses prepared for the birth. Hill stood by Opal's side, using his abilities to monitor the baby's neural activity and energy emissions. The contractions are intensifying the energy output, he reported, his voice tense. The containment field is struggling to compensate. Dr. Zena nodded, her face set with willpower. We need to manually adjust the field strength. Hill, can you help balance it? As Opal's labor progressed rapidly, Hill worked with the engineering team, his hands moving in precise gestures as he manipulated the electromagnetic field. Sweat beaded on his brow as he fought to maintain the delicate balance between containment and safety. The progenitor delegates observed from a nearby room, their advanced sensors providing valuable data on the fetus's changing genetic structure. Hours passed in a blur of intensity. Opal's unique physiology accelerated the labor process, catching the medical team off guard. As she entered the final stages of delivery, the fetus's energy emissions spiked dramatically. Alarms blared as the facility's power grid fluctuated wildly. Hill gritted his teeth, pouring all his concentration into maintaining the containment field. With a final push and a cry of exertion from Opal, their son entered the world. The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in a flurry of activity as the medical team rushed to examine the newborn. Hill cut the umbilical cord with trembling hands, his electromagnetic senses overwhelmed by the complex energy patterns emanating from his son. As he held the child for the first time, he felt a sudden connection, a field of energy linking him, Opal, and their newborn. The infant's eyes, a swirling mix of human and Zarkon features, opened wide. In that moment, another surge of power swept through the facility, temporarily disabling non-essential equipment. Dr. Zena and her team sprang into action, quickly adapting the containment field to create a specialized incubator for the hybrid child. The progenitor delegates offered their assistance, incorporating elements of their advanced technology to better regulate the newborn's unique energy emissions. As Hill cradled his son, marveling at the metallic patterns shifting across the infant's skin, he knew their lives had changed forever. The challenges ahead were numerous, but for now, he focused on the miracle in his arms. The first of a new generation, a bridge between two species and a symbol of hope for the future. As Hill gazed at his son, he noticed the metallic patterns on the infant's skin seemed to pulse in sync with the facility's power fluctuations. He's beautiful, Opal whispered, her voice filled with awe and exhaustion. Dr. Zena approached, her eyes wide with wonder. Congratulations, she said softly. Now, let's get him into the incubator. We need to monitor his energy emissions closely. Hill reluctantly placed his son in the specialized containment unit. The moment the child left his arms, the facility's lights flickered and dimmed. Alarms blared as the power grid struggled to compensate for the sudden energy spike. Looks like he doesn't want to let go, Hill said, managing a nervous chuckle. Over the next few weeks, Hill and Opal adjusted to parenthood while navigating the unique challenges posed by their hybrid son. They named him Zephyr, a name that seemed fitting for a child born of two worlds. Zephyr's abilities manifested early and with startling intensity. Objects in his nursery began to levitate spontaneously, orbiting around his crib like tiny satellites. Electronic devices malfunctioned in his presence, screens flickering with static or displaying nonsensical data. One morning, Hill entered the nursery to find Zephyr suspended in midair, giggling as toys swirled around him in a vortex of electromagnetic energy. The containment field struggled to regulate the outburst, its edges wavering and distorting. Dr. Zena, Hill called urgently. We need to adjust the field strength again. As the incidents grew more frequent and intense, Dr. Zena called a meeting with Hill, Opal, and Admiral Hartwell. The current facility isn't equipped to handle Zephyr's rapidly developing abilities, she explained, gesturing to a holographic display of the child's power readings. I propose we relocate to a more isolated and specially equipped environment. Admiral Hartwell nodded gravely. I've been monitoring the situation. There's a remote outpost on an uninhabited moon orbiting a gas giant in the Proxima system. It was designed for deep space monitoring, but we can retrofit it with the necessary containment systems and medical equipment. Opal's brow furrowed with concern. Is it safe to transport Zephyr over such a long distance? We'll take every precaution, Dr. Zena assured her. I'll personally oversee the modifications to the transport ship. 2 weeks later, Hill and Opal found themselves aboard a specially outfitted Alliance vessel, bound for their new home. Zephyr lay in a portable containment unit, his eyes wide with curiosity as he watched the stars streak by through a reinforced viewport. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared as the navigation systems went haywire. Hill's electromagnetic senses tingled with the surge of energy emanating from his son. The NAV systems are failing. The pilot's panicked voice came over the intercom. We're veering off course. Hill rushed to the bridge, leaving Opal to watch over Zephyr. He placed his hands on the control panel, channeling his own electromagnetic abilities to stabilize the ship systems. Opal, he called through their mental link, I need your help. Can you create a gravity field to counteract Zephyr's effects? In the cabin, Opal closed her eyes, concentrating on forming a localized gravity well around Zephyr's containment unit. The ship's violent shaking gradually subsided as the conflicting forces balanced out. When they finally arrived at the outpost, Hill and Opal exchanged weary but relieved glances. The incident had highlighted the potential dangers of Zephyr's unchecked abilities and the urgent need for specialized training. The outpost, a sprawling complex of reinforced structures nestled in a crater, had been transformed to accommodate its new residents. Energy-dampening fields hummed throughout the facility, ready to contain any power surges. Dr. Zena led them on a tour, pointing out the various modifications. We've set up a series of controlled environments to study and develop Zephyr's abilities safely, she explained, gesturing to a row of sealed chambers. Each room can simulate different gravitational fields and electromagnetic frequencies. As the days passed, Hill and Opal worked tirelessly with the research team to create a training regimen for Zephyr. They designed exercises that combined both parents' abilities, hoping to help their son gain control over his hybrid powers. In one of the specially designed rooms, Hill knelt beside Zephyr, who was now able to sit up on his own. Watch, son, he said softly, levitating a small metal ball in front of them. Feel the electromagnetic field around it. Now, try to move it yourself. Zephyr's forehead creased in concentration. The ball wobbled slightly, then shot across the room, embedding itself in the wall. Hill chuckled, patting his son's head. Well, that's a start. Meanwhile, Opal focused on teaching Zephyr to create and maintain stable gravitational fields. She started with simple exercises, like altering the weight of lightweight objects. Gently now, she coaxed, holding a feather in her palm. Try to make it feel heavier without crushing it. Zephyr giggled, reaching out with chubby fingers. The feather pressed down into Opal's hand, as if it had suddenly gained the weight of a small boulder. She winced slightly, but smiled with pride. The progenitor delegation, maintaining their keen interest in Zephyr's development, provided valuable insights on accelerated learning techniques for advanced species. They suggested incorporating holographic simulations to create safe, virtual environments for power control training. Dr. Zena and her team eagerly implemented these suggestions, developing a series of age-appropriate virtual scenarios. In one simulation, Zephyr found himself in a colorful meadow filled with floating bubbles. Each bubble contained a different electromagnetic frequency or gravitational challenge. As Zephyr's training progressed, his control over his abilities improved, but the intensity of his powers continued to grow at an alarming rate. During one session in the virtual environment, Zephyr became frustrated with a particularly difficult challenge. His emotions triggered a massive surge of energy, creating a localized gravity well strong enough to visibly bend the light around him. Alarms blared throughout the outpost as sensors detected the anomaly. The research team watched in awe and trepidation as the very fabric of space seemed to warp around the child. Dr. Zena's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with concern. Hill, Opal, we need to stabilize him immediately. The containment field is at its limit. As Hill and Opal rushed to calm their son, they exchanged worried glances. They had always known Zephyr would be special, but the true extent of his powers was only beginning to reveal itself. The challenges ahead would test not only their son's growing abilities, but also their own capacity to guide him through this uncharted territory. The implications of Zephyr's growing powers caused great concern on Hill and Opal's minds as they continued their daily routine at the outpost. As Zephyr's first birthday approached, the atmosphere at the facility grew increasingly tense. Hill noticed a shift in the behavior of the research team and the ever-present Alliance personnel. Hushed conversations ceased abruptly when he entered rooms, and Dr. Zena's typically open demeanor became guarded. One evening, as Hill and Opal put Zephyr to bed, a knock at their quarters door broke the calm. Dr. Zena stood in the hallway, her face etched with concern. "We need to talk," she said in a low voice, glancing nervously down the corridor. "It's about Zephyr's future." Once inside, Dr. Zena revealed the source of the recent tension. "The progenitors have proposed an acceleration of Zephyr's growth," she explained, her words careful and measured. "They believe it will help him gain control of his abilities more quickly." Hill felt a knot form in his stomach. Accelerate his growth? How? Dr. Zena outlined the proposal. A series of nutrient infusions and controlled energy field exposures designed to rapidly advance Zephyr's physical development. The process would age him to the equivalent of a 3-year-old human child in a matter of weeks. Opal's eyes widened with alarm. "That's too much, too fast. He's just a baby." "I understand your concerns," Dr. Zena said, her voice softening. "But the Alliance leadership is pushing for this. They're worried about the increasing frequency and intensity of Zephyr's power surges." Over the next few days, heated debates raged among the research team and Alliance representatives. Hill and Opal found themselves at the center of a storm of opinions and pressures from all sides. After agonizing discussions and sleepless nights, they reluctantly agreed to a modified version of the progenitor's plan. The growth acceleration would be implemented under strict medical supervision, with constant monitoring and the ability to halt the process at any sign of distress. The procedure began on a tense morning filled with the hum of advanced medical equipment. Hill held Zephyr's tiny hand as Dr. Zena administered the first nutrient infusion. Opal stood nearby, her fingers splayed against the transparent wall of the medical chamber, ready to generate a protective gravity field at a moment's notice. Days blurred into weeks as Zephyr's body underwent its accelerated changes. Hill and Opal watched in awe and trepidation as their son grew before their eyes, his features shifting and maturing at an unnatural pace. With each passing day, Zephyr's abilities intensified. Objects in his vicinity began to float and spin with increasing frequency. The outpost power grid fluctuated wildly, requiring constant adjustments to the containment systems. One morning, as Hill entered Zephyr's room, he found his son hovering several feet above his bed, giggling as toys orbited around him like miniature planets. The sight filled Hill with a mixture of pride and fear. "Look, Daddy," Zephyr called out, his voice deeper than it had been just days before. "I can make them dance." The toys began to whirl faster, their paths becoming erratic. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The primary power grid had failed, unable to cope with the surge of energy emanating from Zephyr. Hill reached out with his electromagnetic senses, creating a field to stabilize the objects around his son. "Opal," he called through their mental link. "We need you in here now." Opal rushed into the room, her hands already moving to generate a localized gravity well. Together, they created a temporary shield around Zephyr, containing his energy output and preventing further damage to the outpost systems. As the alarms faded and emergency power kicked in, Hill and Opal exchanged worried glances. Their son's powers were growing faster than anyone had anticipated. In the wake of the incident, Admiral Hartwell made a decision that would alter the course of their lives. Unbeknownst to Hill and Opal, he initiated the classified Starburst project, dispatching a team of specialized Alliance operatives to the outpost. The operatives arrived under the guise of additional security and training personnel. Their true mission, to assess Zephyr's potential as a strategic asset and prepare for his possible relocation, remained hidden from the family. As Zephyr's accelerated growth began to stabilize, settling at a physical age equivalent to a 5-year-old human child, the tension at the outpost continued to build. Hill couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, noticing the way the new personnel watched Zephyr with barely concealed interest during training sessions. One afternoon, as Zephyr practiced creating localized electromagnetic fields under Hill's guidance, an unexpected surge of power caused the lights in the training room to flicker and die. In the momentary darkness, Hill felt a shift in the energy around them. When the emergency lights flickered on, he saw Zephyr standing with his arms outstretched, a look of intense concentration on his young face. Between his hands, a small, swirling vortex of light and energy pulsed and crackled. "Dad," Zephyr said, his voice filled with wonder and a hint of fear. "What is this?" Hill stared in astonishment at the miniature wormhole hovering in front of his son. "I'm not sure, Zeph," he replied, his mind racing with the implications of this new ability. "But I think we need to call Dr. Zena right away." As Hill moved to activate the room's communication panel, he caught sight of one of the Alliance operatives watching through the observation window, speaking urgently into a communicator. The knot of unease in Hill's stomach tightened as he realized that Zephyr's latest display of power had just set in motion events beyond their control. As Hill reached for the communication panel, the facility's emergency sirens suddenly blared to life, drowning out the urgent whispers of the Alliance operative. "Warning. Imminent asteroid impact detected. All personnel evacuate immediately," an automated voice announced over the intercom, its robotic tone a stark contrast to the panic now gripping the outpost. Hill's eyes widened as he quickly assessed the situation. This unexpected crisis could be their chance to escape. He turned to Zephyr, who still held the miniature wormhole between his palms, looking both confused and frightened. "It's okay, son," Hill reassured him, placing a hand on Zephyr's shoulder. "We need to find Mom and get out of here." As they exited the training room, they were met by a flood of researchers and personnel rushing towards the evacuation points. Hill navigated through the crowd, using his electromagnetic abilities to create a subtle field around them, gently pushing people aside. They found Opal in their quarters, already packing essential supplies. Her eyes met Hill's, and a silent understanding passed between them. This was their moment. Zephyr created a wormhole, Hill explained quickly, helping Opal gather the last of their belongings. "It's small, but it might be our ticket out of here." Opal nodded, her face set with willpower. "The shielded chamber," she said. "It's our best chance for a stable environment." As they made their way through the chaos-filled corridors, the outpost shuddered violently. The approaching asteroid's gravitational effects were already being felt. Alarms blared incessantly, and panic voices filled the air. They reached the shielded chamber, a room designed to withstand extreme energy fluctuations. Once inside, Hill sealed the door behind them, using his abilities to reinforce the electromagnetic locks. Opal knelt beside Zephyr, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Sweetie, we need you to make that wormhole again, but bigger this time. Can you do that for us?" Zephyr nodded, his young face screwed up in concentration. He held out his hands, and slowly, a swirling vortex of energy began to form between them. As it grew, the air in the chamber crackled with power. Hill and Opal worked in tandem, using their abilities to stabilize the growing wormhole. The room trembled as another shock wave from the approaching asteroid rippled through the facility. Just as the wormhole reached a size large enough for them to pass through, Zephyr's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed into Opal's arms, unconscious from the strain. "Hill, he's out cold," Opal cried, cradling their son. Before Hill could respond, the chamber door burst open. Dr. Zena stumbled in, her lab coat singed and her hair disheveled. "Wait," she gasped, breathing heavily. "You can't trust the Alliance. Hartwell, he's sending ships. They're coming for Zephyr." Hill hesitated for a split second, then made a decision. "Come with us," he said, extending his hand to Dr. Zena. She nodded gratefully, rushing to join them as Hill scooped up the unconscious Zephyr in his arms. Another violent tremor shook the room, and debris began to rain down from the ceiling. The wormhole pulsed erratically, threatening to collapse. Now or never. Hill shouted over the din of alarms and crumbling infrastructure. Together, they leapt into the swirling vortex of energy. For a moment, they were suspended in a realm of pure light and impossible geometries. Then, with a gut-wrenching lurch, they were thrown out onto solid ground. Hill's eyes adjusted slowly to the dim, purple-tinged light. They found themselves on a rocky plateau overlooking a vast alien landscape. Towering crystalline formations jutted from the ground, reflecting the light of a distant, unfamiliar sun. As the wormhole collapsed behind them with a final burst of energy, the group took stock of their surroundings. The air was thin but breathable, with a faintly sweet scent. Opal immediately began checking Zephyr's vital signs, while Dr. Zena rummaged through their hastily packed supplies for medical equipment. "He's stable," Opal announced with relief. "Just exhausted, I think." Hill nodded, his mind already racing with their next steps. "We need shelter," he said, scanning the alien terrain. "And we need to figure out where exactly we are." Using their hybrid abilities, Hill and Opal worked together to create a makeshift shelter, manipulating the surrounding rocks and earth. Dr. Zena continued to monitor Zephyr's condition, her expert medical knowledge proving invaluable in their uncertain situation. As they settled into their crude but functional shelter, a faint, pulsing energy signature caught Hill's attention. He focused his electromagnetic senses, tracing the signal to a nearby crystalline structure. "There's something out there," he said, pointing towards the alien formation. "Some kind of energy source. It might be worth investigating once we're more settled." Opal nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I'll scout the immediate area, see what I can find in terms of resources." As night fell on the alien world, casting long shadows across the purple landscape, the group huddled in their shelter. Zephyr remained unconscious, his breathing steady but his powers fluctuating in small, unpredictable bursts. Hill stood at the entrance, watching the unfamiliar stars emerge in the darkening sky. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger adventure. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together as a family. In the distance, the crystalline structure continued to pulse with its mysterious energy, a beacon of both hope and uncertainty in this strange new world. As Hill contemplated their next move, a faint vibration in the air caught his attention. His electromagnetic senses tingled, alerting him to an approaching disturbance. "Opal," he called softly, not wanting to wake Zephyr. "Do you feel that?" Opal stepped out of the shelter, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Yes, there's a shift in the gravitational field. Something's coming." Dr. Zena joined them, her eyes scanning the horizon. Could it be a natural phenomenon of this planet? Hill shook his head. "No, it's too regular. It feels artificial." As if in response to his words, a sleek, silvery shape appeared in the sky, descending towards their location. The Zarthalian scout ship moved with an otherworldly grace, its hull shimmering with an iridescent glow. "We need to hide," Opal said urgently, her hands already moving to manipulate the gravitational fields around them. Hill nodded, extending his electromagnetic abilities to complement Opal's efforts. Together, they created a cloaking field around the alien outpost, bending light and energy to conceal their presence from the approaching vessel. Inside the shelter, Dr. Zena worked frantically, her fingers flying over the alien console they had discovered. "I think I can activate some of the outpost's defensive systems," she called out. "But I need more time to decipher these controls." As the Zarthalian ship landed near the outpost, Zephyr stirred in his sleep, his powers fluctuating wildly in response to the increased tension. Small objects around him began to float and spin, responding to the child's unconscious manipulation of electromagnetic fields. Hill and Opal watched with a mixture of awe and trepidation as a small team of alien explorers emerged from the ship. The Zarthalians were unlike anything they had ever seen. Their bodies seemed to pulse with an inner light, tentacle-like appendages moving with fluid grace. Their ethereal appearance suggested an evolutionary path far beyond human or Zarkon understanding. "What do we do?" Opal whispered, her eyes fixed on the alien visitors. Hill took a deep breath, weighing their options. "We can't hide forever, and if they're hostile, we're in no position to fight. I think we need to reveal ourselves cautiously." Opal nodded, her face set with perseverance. "Agreed, but we do it together." They called Dr. Zena, who reluctantly left her work on the outpost systems to join them. Hill gently woke Zephyr, explaining the situation in hushed tones. As the family prepared to step out and meet the Zarthalians, Zephyr's abilities suddenly stabilized. The child's eyes glowed with an inner light, and he raised his hands, creating a series of small, shimmering portals in the air around them. "What are you doing, sweetie?" Opal asked, marveling at the intricate network of miniature wormholes. Zephyr smiled, his young face alight with wonder. "Helping us talk to them, Mom. These will translate for us." Hill exchanged a surprised glance with Opal. Their son's powers continued to evolve in ways they could never have imagined. Taking a collective deep breath, the family stepped out of their hiding place, allowing the cloaking field to dissipate. The Zarthalians turned towards them, their tentacles rippling with patterns of light that seemed to convey surprise and curiosity. Through Zephyr's translation field, a melodious voice reached their ears. "Greetings, unexpected ones. We are the Zarthalians, guardians of the ancient network. Who are you, and how have you come to activate this long-dormant outpost?" Hill stepped forward, his hand intertwined with Opal's. "I am Hill, and this is my wife, Opal. We are hybrids, a combination of human and Zarkon. This is our son Zephyr and our friend, Dr. Zena. We arrived here by accident, fleeing from those who sought to exploit our son's unique abilities." The lead Zarthalian, its body pulsing with patterns of blue and gold, moved closer. "I am Zilvax. Your presence here is most intriguing. For millennia, we have watched over this network, waiting for worthy successors to claim the mantle of galactic stewardship. Your activation of the outpost and your hybrid nature mark you as potential candidates for this role." Opal's eyes widened. "Galactic stewardship? What exactly does that entail?" Zilvax's tentacles swirled in a complex pattern. "It is a great responsibility and an even greater honor. But first, you must prove yourselves worthy. Are you willing to undergo the trials set by our people?" Hill and Opal exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. They had come too far and faced too much to turn back now. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. "We accept your challenge," Hill said, his voice steady and resolute. Zilvax's body flashed with approval. "Very well. Let the trials begin." As the Zarthalians led them towards a previously hidden section of the outpost, Hill felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. They were about to embark on a journey that would test not only their hybrid abilities, but also their character and their bond as a family. Little did they know that these trials would push them to their limits, forcing them to confront their deepest fears and make decisions that would shape the future of the galaxy. With each step, they moved closer to their destiny as potential guardians of an ancient and powerful network, their actions poised to ripple across the cosmos in ways they could scarcely imagine.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.